What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Fast Life Podcast. Woo! I think it's Thursday. It will be Thursday when you hear this, I believe. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully. Not important. What is important that you're back. I appreciate you guys for checking us out again. While down in Galveston, I got to meet Chris Callen, who it's so funny because if any of you other guys are like listen to a lot of podcasts like I do, like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and Fighter and the Kid and all this. Well, obviously there's a guy on there named Brian Callen, right? He's a common guest, whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And for some reason in my head, I kept like wanting to call Chris Brian. And I can't remember if I did it on the podcast or if it was before the podcast, but it's like, I don't know, I guess a podcast nerd guy like me, would catch that kind of thing or whatnot. But anyway, Chris Callen is the owner, operator, and founder of Cycle Source Magazine, which is always been a pretty badass magazine in the industry. So I was pretty happy to get him on and pretty excited to hear to give you guys his kind of thoughts and stuff. And man, I'm really taken back by the guy. Man, he's a very, very knowledgeable guy that really cares about this culture of motorcycles as a whole, and I'm just glad that I was able to give him a little bit of some airtime to kind of reach you guys. So I appreciate you guys listening and appreciate Brian and also on this podcast is my buddy Moose. Which, we'll have Moose on here at some point in time. I just need to wait till I have enough bandwidth because we're probably going to blow out the record for the longest podcast, I think. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I'd like to thank all our sponsors, man. And one of our new sponsors and somebody that's, really doing a lot of badass shit, man. D&D Pipes, man. I hope you guys are checking them out. Actually, D&D Exhaust, I'm sorry. What's really badass about D&D right now is, if you listen to the podcast with Rusty, then he's got a military background and does a lot and is trying to do a lot for military shit. So it's really badass what he's doing, and it's even cooler that he's doing this. So basically, for the month of November, any military veterans. Let me rephrase this. All right, so. Basically, they're putting out one of their biggest sales ever. And as a supporter of the military and other veterans, they're going to be offering 20% off plus a swag bag, which I have no idea what that's going to be. But it's going to be, actually, I do know what that is. That's going to be probably some hats, shirts, and some cool shit like that or something. So basically, it's going to be open to all Marines, I guess Marines and veterans in general, military, from the 10th of this month on to what was I think from the 10th to the rest of the month, 20% off. You pretty much can't, that's a huge discount, guys. Like for someone that sells parts, like for a living and has been in that business, like 20% margin is kind of what most people have to sell parts at. So you're going to be getting a smoking ass deal on this deal. So I would definitely jump on it if you're in the military. That's the kicker, right? So check that out. 20% off for, basically a Veterans Day deal through the November for all active and retired military. You got to call 844-D&D PIPE with proof of service for those deals. The other good note on top of this is for all you other guys that, also want to get fitted up with some really high quality exhaust systems that perform and do a lot of what you would expect from exhaust. We have an offer code where you can put in at the website or over the phone, basically, let them know what's up, that you heard them at Fast Life. So offer code is Fast Life, one word, and it's going to give you 5% off. I know I'm not as good as the military, so I'm sorry. But it is helpful, and I'm glad that these guys are trying to do stuff like this. So check out that as well as their website, exhaust.com, as well as the same as for Facebook, and Instagram is D exhaust. Also, once again, you can call them at 844-D&D PIPE, and either way you do it, let them know you heard about them through the podcast, even if it is for the the military discount. So want to thank Rusty and the people at D&D for supporting this podcast and all that good jazz. So support a company like his. Okay. Also want to thank my buddy Mark at Texas Performance MC. You can check out his website, which I'm so sad, but I've never been on his website before. I'm going to have to go on there. That's crazy. I've been talking about his website all year. I've never been on it. But anyway, TexasPerformanceMC.com if you want to check out his website, as well as Texas Performance MC on Instagram if you just want to give him a follow and stay in the loop with what's going on in his neck of the woods. Also, if you're looking for a shop to kind of handle your maintenance work, service work, which I think is the same thing, and performance upgrades and parts and Dixon flannels and all that cool, jazz, he's in Austin. So he's in Texas. And I know Texas is a big state, but, when you want to have quality work done to your bike, you go to a quality person, and that's going to be Mr. Mark Matthews, Texas Performance MC. Check him out. I also want to thank Paint Huffer Metal Flake for everything they do for us. Just sprayed some orange flake on a skateboard. And no, it's not a giveaway skateboard. I'm sorry. It's a practice skateboard for me, and I'm going to sell it because I got a lot of taxes to pay. It's a crazy story. I'll tell you about it one day. Anyway, checked it out, man. I sprayed their Agent Orange on it. It's pretty sick, man. I sprayed it over orange base, flaked the fuck out of it, and I'm excited to see what I can kind of do with a different kind of look now. So you can also get a lot of those flakes at painthuffer.com. Checked all that out. They got FBS tapes, obviously flakes, pearls, and I want to say they're selling House of Color products now as well, so you can check that out. Also, you can go to Paint Huffer Metal Flake on Instagram and just check out a lot of really, really badass paint work. Best place to check it all out. I also want to thank Horsepower Inc. You can check those guys out at horsepowerinc.net. On Instagram is Horsepower Inc. for Instagram, and Horsepower Inc. Indy on Facebook. Jimmy and those dudes up there are obviously doing badass stuff up in Indianapolis, man. They got a really badass shop, really clean, ready to, just dial in all your needs for, performance V twins, you know what I mean? So really great tuner, I believe. I don't know the right word for it, but basically in-house dyno tuning and all that stuff is all right there, right in Indianapolis. So, and from what I understand, Indianapolis is not that far of a drive from Chicago and Ohio and all you Great Lakes surrounding supporting states, or whatever you want to call it. So check out Horsepower Inc. And also, if you're trying to get your fuel injected bike to just have some extra pep and whatnot, you should really look into their throttle bodies, man. It's they do some really great wonders with, in addition to things that you do to your bike. So pipe, exhaust, which is the same thing, but just, you get where I'm going. But check them out. Anyway, I also want to thank you guys for continuing to support us, man. FastLifeGarage.com. Links to all our stuff, Patreon, YouTube, even got pictures of stuff that's not important anymore. And just thank you. Check it all out. Like I said many times, man, the Patreon thing's growing, and I thank you guys for that. And I hope this content is worth it for what you guys do to support it, because it's helping me do a lot of things and keep this thing going and invest more and more time into it, which means more and more podcasts, more and more people from the industry that you're going to want to hear from. And it's a business like anything else, and that Patreon is a big supporter of that, as well as the sponsors. So when you guys listen to our sponsors, man, I appreciate it. If you do decide to reach out, even if it's questions or whatever, just let them know you heard about them on the podcast, even if they're not a sponsor. I can't tell you how many people reached out to me and said they're going to buy Zippers cams now. So, hopefully they know that they heard about that through this podcast. So anyway, anything you can do help. And as far as Patreon, man, if you only got $1, that helps. It adds up. If everyone, like I said before, if every one of you guys listened to this consistently, just paid $1, man, I could quit my job. Let's just say that. But anyway, thank you guys for everything you do. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear Chris Callen. Oh, another thing. We did this podcast in a van by the ocean while the Galveston bike rally was taking place behind us. So there's a lot of background noise, and we're in a van and we're passing a microphone around. So this is the most primitive podcast I've done so far, but I do really want to thank those guys for taking the time out of the rally to sit down and do it. And want to apologize if the audio is not as good as it was. I think it sounds pretty decent. It's just a lot of background noise. But anyway, without further ado, here is Chris Moos and Brian Callen. See how I fucked up again. Chris Callen. Thanks.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
All right, we're rolling now. Fuck it. We'll make it work somehow.
Ghetto bird.
There we go. We're on the beachfront property right now in Galveston, Texas at Lone Star Rally with Chris Callen, and in the background we got Mr. Moose Mitts. Say hi, Moose.
What's up, guys?
I think I got that. So, man, I didn't really have a format to talk about, so I just figured we'd just shoot the shit.
That's good.
You know, whatnot.
I like that.
I've had a lot of people, man, ever since we started a podcast. You know, it's a weird thing. There's not a whole lot of podcasts out there, but there's a whole lot of podcasts, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like smaller ones, or I wouldn't even say smaller ones, but there's just a lot of people doing it. But obviously, you know, y'all's, which is what's the name of it? The
Shop Talk.
Shop Talk. Yeah. So y'all's, and then my buddy Danger Dan, obviously he's the one that got us into the podcast, and it's like there's a couple of them that are out there that are real big and whatnot. And you guys have been one of the, like, hey, you should get Chris Callen on. They're always traveling, they're always on the road, all this crazy shit. So here you go, guys. Fuck it.
Well, you know, the cool thing about that, man, is what we've been able to do with the different formats like podcasting and video casting and everything is you get to hang out with somebody that you may not run into and actually have one-on-one time with them, but you get to be in that same environment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's definitely a new medium, though, for the most part. I mean, I feel like as weird as it is, I wouldn't say it's replacing magazines, but it's giving them something that magazines used to give them. You know, the information, the connection to the industry, opinions, and things like that.
You know, smart magazines, and I won't say this just because, you know, I'm a media whore, and I'll be the first one to say that. Not getting media for myself, but being part of every media that I can. That's the job of a magazine today. You should actually just call yourself a content creator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we do video, we do social media, we do podcasting, we do video casting. Like, you have to, that's your job now. You know, it used to be two-dimensional and you could have it all happen inside the pages of your magazine, but the world's different. And if you want to survive in the world today, it takes 10 times the work for less money than what it used to be. And nobody wishes that it was the glory days more than me, because I'd be rolling in dough right now, you know, but I'm not. I make a living doing what I do, and I bust my ass, but that's no different than most of the other guys in the motorcycle business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, though, because, you know, you do have to do it all now. You can't get away with just putting out print and then separating yourself from the life. You almost got to be immersed in it, which is how I envision you guys are.
Oh, and I dig that.
Yeah.
I dig that because there's less room for fakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Really. I mean, you know, Moose and I both went through a time where, you know, you could be Johnny in the spotlight and you could fake your way through a lot of shit, and that's happening less and less today.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get away with that. Pretty soon somebody's gonna ask you to put your money where your mouth is and be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, man, there is a lot of fakes, and that does come across a lot, and you can see it, especially with a lot of magazines or a lot of just anything that's like catering to the motorcycle community. You see a lot of the corporate control of it, and then there's like people that make decisions don't really have any passion for the stuff, and then they have a few people that might be there that are interested, but it's just a job.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, like. And also, I mean, I'm a huge fan of magazines myself. Like, I love the physical holding a print, you know, seeing pictures, you know, whether it's, you know, taking a shit or just, you know, hanging out in the house and not, you know, trying to stay off your phone for fucking, you know, an hour or something a night.
Yeah.
Get immersed in something else, you know.
Well, there's a funny thing happening with that, because we're actually reaching a period of techno burnout. Like, they're doing studies now where millennials and post-millennials especially are getting to a point where they've been bombarded with technology. Like, we've grown into it with our generation where, you know, it came on a little bit of time, a little more. Yeah. Well, the millennials and the post-millennials, it's been full bore since the day they realized what it was, you know. So they're getting to a point where more and more of them are starting to look for tactile experiences. They want to go back and learn the trades. They want to stay away from the computers. They want to do things that are participation events like camping and hiking and shit like that. They want to be in it. They want to be involved, you know.
That makes a lot of sense. Would that also probably be maybe the resurgence of like the vintage chopper making a comeback? And
vintage choppers, FXRs, guys actually racing. I mean, how many years, man, did we sit here and just watch people hang out and get drunk at a parking lot, you know? And now there's hooligan racing, flat track stuff, the beach racing that's going on. There's hill climbs again. Like, they had a racetrack inside the Buffalo Chip the year before, last year too. Racetrack inside the Buffalo Chip. Yeah, this man right here.
Yeah, and I actually was fortunate enough to race in the Coleman Gambler 500 Invitational, the first one, and they let us race their mini bikes on the TT track and up and around a bar and head-to-head traffic up and down a diamond plate dirt covered ramp, which was dangerous as hell. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see racing come back because I think it draws the crowd, it creates more interest, and people are paying more attention to the ancillary things that go on with the event instead of the stand around and get drunk.
Which, man, I mean, I came up through, like, me and a bunch of my buddies started a thing called the Limpnicky lot years and years ago, and, like, we were out of control, buck wild for getting drunk and wrecking places, but there's got to be more to it than that. We were also out of control we were some of the first guys to bring mini bike racing around all these places, and we did hill climbs out to Broken
big
Spoke.
itself, the mini bike racing.
And it's, I mean, anytime you can get people actually doing stuff, because when they're doing it, they extract everything out of it that they should, and they're going to be back, I mean, there's only so many times you can go and see the same vendors and do the same shit. It's a lot of that's become homogenized.
Well, I feel like I've said this a lot before to people, and I feel like there's a part of like the events and the shows where people want. I lost my train of thought of it, but it's like you get tired of seeing custom bikes, and you want to, like, people want experiences now. They want more experiences on the bike instead of just the experience of spending a lot of money having a bike built and letting it sit in a show all weekend while you walk around and drink beer. It's like they want to fucking race. They want to get on the beach and do that, or they want to check out the sites and stuff. And I feel like there's obviously people that do that shit, but there's a lot of like people that make up the custom bike area that build all these high end bikes and stuff. And
well, there's two sides of it right there that you just talked about. Like, let's separate people that build the high-end bikes with the custom bike scene, because custom motorcycling has always been a blue-collar event. You know what I mean? Like, the real custom motorcycle scene happens between two guys in a garage over a can of beer talking about the coolest fucking motorcycle ever. Yeah. That's custom motorcycling.
For sure.
You know what I mean? The business that it becomes, it can go in a lot of different directions. That's where you get all the different styles, the different levels, the different price structure and everything else. But the soul of it, the part that's the beautiful, pure thing, happens in a little garage in houses all across America with people dreaming about having the perfect bike someday. And that guy might only do a paint job, or he might put a sissy bar on his bike this year or something. You know what I mean? But that's really where it comes from.
That's actually the best point. That's the best way to say it. So yeah, I don't know, man. I'm excited to see things changing. Got something there?
Yeah, one thing to that though, in respect to all the really great custom bike builders out there, is that I think it is the position of the people that can create and make the thing that is overly done to most people, to attract the attention and the desire and the drive of the people that only can afford the handlebars or only can afford a t-shirt or a button or a pin or a sticker, because those little things drive the industry too. That supports the nickel and dime things support the industry. And the common guy who only in his garage can afford a set of handlebars or a seat or an exhaust, they are the ones that are supporting the industry. When I first got involved, I had this grand thing. I was going to sit there and make a list of every custom bike that went by that was within the genre of what we were working on. And I was like, I'm going to make a list of everything that's on those bikes and find out what the average person is spending. And it really came down to what everybody knows, and I got insight to, which is exhaust, handlebars, footboards, air cleaner. Like, that was it. And so the guys are only spending, a percentage of their income each year, but it takes guys spending their whole month, 2-3 month, a year,
like taking a loan on their 401k to
and
get
having
a bike
that
built.
super crazy custom bike, because that super crazy custom bike makes the enthusiast go spend the $500, the $600, the $1,000. Without that, you don't have the guys that are spending that lower level point part that really sustains the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of stepping back, like with your magazine, like how, like, what was it, 25 years now, or what?
22.
22 years.
Yeah.
So, like, how did all that stuff come about? Like, I mean, you don't have to give me the full long one, but just whatever.
I mean, the quick story is I was a bouncer in a titty bar that had a little aftermarket shop that a buddy of mine was going to do a 2-year bid on gun charges, and I took over his shop.
Yeah.
And And a buddy of mine came back from Florida showing me this cool bike that he saw in Florida Bike Week, and he was holding a local magazine. It was newspaper, and he was like, dude, we should do a bike like this. And I'm looking at the magazine. I said, dude, we should do a magazine like this. Like, we could do this, right? Neither one of us knew a fucking thing at all about the computer. Like, nothing. I had to go. There was 2 guys I knew that were doing a magazine called The Go-Go, and I knew them from the Titty Bar. So they taught me, like, my original Photoshop, which was like 3.0 at the time or something.
I remember that one.
Right? And they taught me Photoshop, and we sold all the ads for the first month of the magazine and had to put it off a month until we learned enough about doing Photoshop to be able to do a magazine.
I think the things I learned on that Photoshop is literally the only skills I have. I don't even know how to use the new CS 6.0, whatever the fuck it is.
And
now.
they say that, like, the best people in the world on Photoshop still only use like 15% of it.
Yeah,
like, that's
crazy.
Yep.
That's cool though. The you know, I really dig magazines, man. I always have. Like, I have buckets full every time. Like, I used to be in, like, probably late 90s. I was into like tuner cars and shit.
Yeah.
So I had the Super Street and all that shit. And then when we started building or customizing street bikes, we got real big and real close with a Super Street Bike, which was I guess it was a bigger company that had I don't know if you remember a magazine called like Two Wheel Tuner or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were all competing with each other. And
yeah, that was actually that company, and its inception was, God, I'm going to show my age. I can't even remember the damn names. 3 companies ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, the same group of magazines is now owned by Bonnier, that still to this day owns like Hot Bike and Street Chopper and everything. But it moved through a couple companies.
I remember because they used to move editors around. Yeah. Like, oh, well, we're going to get, you've done well with Super Street Bike. Let's put you on Cycle World or something like that for a while and build up the content or the reader base or whatever the case may be, which that's cool, I guess, for a corporate side of it. But, like, you want, like it's kind of a tribal thing. Like, I stick with this magazine, and I want this magazine to give me everything. I don't want 40 of them.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I understand that you can't really have that and everything. But
you know, man, I mean, let's go for a minute. I'll talk shit on myself, but that's the reason why we call Cycle Source. You know, there's times where Cycle Source, like for the last bunch of years, it's been more about 70s chopper style bikes. There's been times where, you know, back through the late 90s, it was more about pro street customs, and we've always kept that flexibility to move in and out of whatever the trend is. You know, we run FXRs, we run a cool bagger every once in a while, but this day and age, we're so lucky, man, because, like, when a magazine, no matter how cool your magazine is, people put them away and they keep them. A lot of people send me pictures of magazines, stacks that they've had for years of mine, but nothing's as cool as the fact that after our magazine comes off of the newsstand, we republish every story onto our blog, and it lives on there forever. So I have a 20-year non-stop magazine that we just keep adding pages to, that's on my blog, that you can search everything on it. So it's like a digital library, you know, that's always at your fingertips. And that's through technology and how lucky we are today. You know, when I first started Cycle Source, the local competitors that I had laughed at the fact that I had a website. They were like, people are not going to dig motorcycle stuff on a website. And I'm like, what? They're gonna, whether you dig it or not, man. You know?
That's actually pretty cool, man. I have some. I remember I bought a couple of the magazines when I first got into painting motorcycles, right? And I used to like y'all's magazine because it was very colorful, and it had a lot of really good pictures of the bikes. Like you would take a picture. I remember Buck Wild did a paint job on one of the bikes. This is the magazine I have in my head that I'm thinking of, and it had to be like 06, 7, or 8, something like that, and he did a paint job with like Jesus or some shit, or Mother Mary on the tank, and there were so many really good photos of the paintwork and the details of the bike in it, and then from there on, I just, like, you know, I was either buying an Easy Rider or a hot bike, and I used to tend to go more towards the Cycle Source, because for someone that's looking for the details of the bike, it was there and it was clear.
And, you know, probably because I'm not as good a businessman as some of the other magazine guys, like, I am less apt to put a picture of a part that somebody makes that someone bought and put on that bike than I am something that the guy made, or, you know, something that required the creative process. You know, just because that's where I come from and the stuff that I do when I build motorcycles. So that's what I dig, and that's what we publish. You know, my wife would probably like to punch me in the face for that, because, you know, if you put sponsors and advertisers' products in, it's better for your overall business. But I think about the reader, you know.
Yeah, the reader needs to be thought of too, you know, because
I owe that to Jay Allen, believe it or not. The guy that started the Broken Spoke Saloons and like took them all over the country. Jay Allen told me one day, he said, listen, he said, and I just got to the national newsstand and everything started growing a lot. And we were standing out back of his place in Laconia, and he said, listen, he said, I want to tell you something. He said, I'm just a bar owner. He said, but here's the deal. He said, and he was pointing at another really big magazine at the time. He said, don't ever turn into these fucking idiots. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe he was saying that, you know. And I said, what do you mean? He said, don't ever forget your readers. He said, advertisers are going to start coming at you, and people like me that own properties like this, and they're going to start throwing money at you. He said, don't forget that guy that spends $5 to get out of his own head for a minute and look into your world. Don't forget that guy. He said, don't become those people that only do this for the business part of it. You know, so I think about that every month, man.
that is a good point, because like I said, I hear a lot of you know, I'm critical on everything, because I for a stint, I really considered doing a magazine. I really did. Like when we started this podcast and we started getting more, you know, Jeff Holt told me on the podcast we did with him, he goes like, as a journalist, whether it's a podcast or you know, a vlogger or whatever the hell you're doing, it's your job to mirror what you're seeing, your industry, like from your perspective or whatever. And it was just like something I really wanted to do. And then when you go back and look at certain magazines, and they just were filled with like unrelated ads that didn't really relate to the reader at all, but it was just the corporates putting and shoving all kinds of shit in there just to make the magazines work. When I do like the aspect of some of the more grassroots magazines, like your Dice and your Show Class and stuff like that, they have a vibe that's
Dude,
really.
listen, I love Show Class.
Yeah.
If I had a ball in my body, I would do a magazine like that, because I love it. I love it. It so reminds me of Dirty Biker magazines when I was a kid. I love that magazine. I love it.
So that's one thing I remember about. I guess it was my grandfather, or I take that back. It was my stepmother's father, so my step-grandfather. I remember going to his house when I was younger and sitting at the coffee table and eating, and it was all the cutouts of the naked chicks out of all the biker mags, and the whole table was like, what is that, macrame, or what are you, glue all the stuff down?
Paper mache
Yeah, like
shit.
the whole table was nothing but naked chicks, and I used to always, I'd be like, no, I don't want to sit at the table, I didn't eat right here at the coffee table, and I would stand at like 5 years old, 7 years old, just like staring at titties.
Well,
going,
dude,
it was
always,
the coolest table in the world, and I found out where he got them, and it was all his bike magazines. They were
Dude,
cut up.
you'd always know when you went to like an old school bike shop, because their bathroom would be nothing but the pinup chicks from those magazines, just titties everywhere and shit, and a bunch of wads of paper towels in the like that didn't look like anything that came out of your ass, dude.
And you know, man, like even down to the name of the magazine, Cycle Source literally comes from my favorite magazine when I was a kid was Super Cycle. And I mean, that was a dirty magazine, man. That thing was hardcore, boy. And I tried to take in what I do, take the foundation of that. Of course we can't, like in today's day and age with the political climate of everything, you couldn't do a magazine like that on the level that we do Cycle Source, you know. It's just not that kind of world today. But you know, I try to take a lot of the good foundation parts of that, you know, the grassroots part, that we give equal time to regular guys as much as we do to big name builders. If anything, we stay away from big name builders and big companies, and we focus more on the grassroots effort, because like we said, back to the two guys in the garage, that's where the passion comes from, man. That's the best part of this.
It keeps you more relatable. You know?
It doesn't get any better than that for me. I mean, I have a little 2-car garage at my house where I build my stuff, and we sit there and we talk shit. It's great.
Well, I think a lot of businesses too that, like, I mean, Moose, you can attest to this. It's like you see these shops that get so big, you know, that the passion for motorcycling, I feel like, eludes the shop at some point in time, and then it's coming back. Then you come back to. I hear it a lot from people like, oh man, now I'm back in my garage, and you know, it's not a manufacturer anymore. It's not this crazy shit. It's just building the next cool bike, and people find the love for it again. You know, it's like sometimes growing to a big level is like it's death of your creative mind, or it's death of your brand, or all kinds of stuff.
Well, and to that tune too, one of the things that you get so wrapped up in when you're trapped in that big mechanical monster that is big business, you're right, you lose sight of the origin of why it is you do what it is you do. And you, unfortunately, you know, you're familiar, like I spoke earlier, being creative on demand. it's one thing to be creative on demand on your own terms.
Yeah.
But to be creative on demand as like some kind of manufactured good, it takes away the soul of the product, and it takes away the soul of your intent. And like the whole reason why I built my bike was because I was tired of just doing the thing I was told to do, that I wanted to do something that created value for me and put the passion back into my work, because I was creating so much on demand that I didn't care as much as I should for what I was supposed to be creative for.
Exactly.
So I had to do something for myself to reel myself back in and say, dude, this is why I do this. And this is why I'm creative. And I think that, like, the soul of the grassroots magazine, that's not this big corporate entity that Cycle Source is really valuable to the community, because they show the common man and the people that are actually the salt of the earth that are part of these rallies, instead of the big corporations that are sucking us dry.
Yeah.
And it really creates a value in a community and culture that surrounds these rallies and the events that we do. And like the In Motion show is a great example of, showing the soul and the creation of these motorcycles.
How relatively new is the In Motion show?
This is the second year only.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't want to say. I want to say it was about 2 years in my mind that I remember it going on. So,
and I'll tell you the roots of that. Like this adds to the fact that because no corporation owns my magazine, and as rocky as that gets sometimes. I mean, there's been, since the magazine went to national newsstands, it's been over 12 years now. But there's been times, dude, like where, I was selling motorcycles and rolling change and shit to get another issue out, and like it gets heavy at times. But not having a corporation, like sometimes I can just champion a cause. Like right now today, I can stand up and go, you know what, that's fucking bullshit, and I'm gonna call bullshit on it. I don't, the only thing I have to answer to is my opinion. I don't have to get a phone call from the boss and get my ass chewed out about, what I mean, right or wrong. I pass or fail based on what my opinion of it is. So
that's good.
It's really good. Like when it comes to In Motion, a lot of people might not know this, but In Motion started over a complete injustice that was going on in a show exactly like In Motion, that was given a prize just like that, but they weren't qualifying the bikes. Mm-hmm. So you had builders from across the country, and I was involved in this show. I went there every year, and I piped this thing up, and I worked on it, and I got builder friends of mine to come there and compete. And then we all started finding out that, like, some of the guys that were winning had motorcycles that some of them didn't have motor parts in, and they didn't run. And it was like, you got guys like, spending their entire allotment of capital for a year to compete in a show like that. And the guy that's winning, their bike runs. This guy that beat them doesn't even have pistons.
Yeah.
And like, we all just pulled out and said, you know what, man, fuck that. If it's going to be like that, then it has to run. Like in America, we talked about this with the AMD show. Cool as the AMD show, World Championship of Bike Building. It's a European mindset. They build motorcycles based on engineering feats. Like they want to challenge themselves on an engineering level. So they build these incredible things, whether they're rideable or function, full on form and the whole deal. Doesn't even matter. It's all about that engineering. Here in the United States, our custom culture begins and ends with like the hot rod mindset. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We want to tear ass around, have fun on motorcycles.
How much ass can we get with this?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you let the American custom motorcycle scene slip into a place where having a running, functioning motorcycle does not take precedence over anything else, then it's a shame. So we got the chance to do this. A bunch of us, like, we started calling each other back and forth and saying, okay, well, what should the parameters be? And we set up the rules and the judging criteria and the way it all worked, and and set down that to put a flag in the ground and say, and it has to run. Of course it has to run. Like, that we shouldn't even have to talk about shit like that, but we do.
One thing that, before we really started going down the FXR path and getting into the more performance bikes and shit like that, we were big in the bagger and the big wheel stuff. That's where me and Moose met and things like that. And I remember the first year down here, when Misfit, they did the King's Ransom bike that I did with Chris. Mm-hmm. That was here, and that was with what was the magazine? American Bagger.
American Bagger, that was on it won Baddest Bagger actually.
It was the first Baddest Bagger. It was right when that series took place. And at first it was cool, but the more years that went on and we saw that show, and then you see all the drama and the shit online, all the Facebook pages and shit, and it's like the show has so much clout if you win it, to the people talking shit and all that, but in reality, it's a people's choice show, which when you're at them, you got these dudes running around being your friend to get you to vote for their shit.
Yeah.
It's like, I just don't, I know that a lot of people do people's choice shows, but I think that things need to be judged like by people that know what the fuck they're looking at. Not.
And one, listen, man, I mean, I will just say this straight up. People's choice is nice if you want to have a trophy in addition to your bike show.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to let the crowd participate, let the crowd pick out a bike to give a trophy. That's fine.
Yeah.
But responsibility dictates that if you're going to have a show, especially at a level where you're having guys who make their careers off of building motorcycles, fabricating parts, if you're going to have a show and you want those guys to come out and put their name and their reputation on the line, you have a responsibility as a show promoter to put together a judging criteria that gives them as much respect for their work as they're giving you for bringing it to your show.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what we were noticing, is that just people just running around trying to buddy system their way into trophies, and then as soon as they won the trophy, it was like middle finger to everybody else, like, we're the baddest bagger of Sturgis, fuck off, you know.
And to the tune of that show, as much as I love Dave, and
I do too.
Dave is an amazing guy, and Tony, who's no longer with him, he's actually at American Iron now, but
yeah. I miss my boy Jesse, the photographer.
100%. Man, the thing for me, like, when I looked at Baddest Bagger, you remember when Lynn Edmondson won with the Knucklebagger? Like,
that was the same year Daryl brought
bike.
that fucking Pan King out there.
And the Pan King was a great bike.
Yeah.
Because there was fabrication, there was engineering, all these things that got put into these bikes. And, you know, like Tyler Foster, Sick Pipes bike, that's an amazing bike, a very custom-built bike. Cool. But the problem is that you more and more see at these shows guys that will win that have just bought a bunch of parts, painted them, and done different metal finishes, and then put it on the street. And to me, that's not the essence of a custom-built bike. That's a custom-assembled bike.
That's a customer's bike. Yeah.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. And as a fabricator, a builder, and a guy that knows that I'm going to spend 4 hours on something you'll never see that's smaller than the palm of my hand in order to make it right, and I'll probably make it 3 times because I'm not satisfied with it, you know? I want to go to a show that is validating people's craftsmanship and the work that they put into it, and is judged like the In Motion show is, because all of those hard nights that we spend building the thing that makes us happy is paid attention to.
It's got to have the show itself, the concept of it, all that stuff has to be, what do you call it, it's got to have integrity, and the integrity is going to come with the judging criteria, and not being like, hey man, you're a big sponsor of our podcast or our fucking whatever, so you know, we're gonna.
It's got to be beyond reproach,
dude. I've been to shows where I just showed up, and because I showed up and helped them, you know, promote it, I've gotten a check, like, oh, first place, Jace Hudson, with this blah blah blah. I was like, thanks, man, you know, and that I was young and stuff, so I didn't really understand how that was devaluing the concept. And you know, I as someone that does custom work for a living, I understand how important shows are, because people go to shows to check out bikes and they get inspired and they want to come back with something that they like. They want to be a part of it. So you know, a Baddest Bagger or that show or the Parrots Paint show, all these things, people check it out and like, man, you know what, this is a cool show. I want to come back next year and win this thing. So now guys like me get employed, guys like you get employed, and it helps drive the industry. It really does.
Well, and see, then let's be clear about one thing. There's different level of shows, or there should be different levels of shows. There are shows like the In Motion show. Yeah. You know, big invitational shows that are asking professionals to come in and be judged for their work. Then there's, like, on Saturday here, we'll have our Ride-In Custom Bike Show. You know, and that's just a grassroots motorcycle show. We still treat it with respect, and you know, all the bikes get judged, and you know, they get what they're due. You know, but it's not the same. Like, you're not putting your career on the line going into a show like that. That's just a cool Saturday show.
But just the In Motion show as well. I mean, it's guys like Moose and 3-2 is 3-2 there too. Yeah. So you got these guys that could be sought out for to have a bike built that way. So in a way, it's still also helpful. And then of course, you know, the Ride-In show gives the average guy, you know, the garage guy, or hell, some of these guys in that show might be garage guys as well. So.
There's actually in Motion, Clinton Wallace is one of my favorite stories from In Motion. He is literally a garage guy, but man, I'll tell you what, he's a Texas boy that's putting foot to ass in the custom motorcycle world. He was just invited to Lichter's deal this year. Like, his bikes are incredible, you know.
Well, one of the great things about the criteria that's required for the judging is that we pay so many different groups of attention to things on the motorcycle. In the middle of judging on Clinton's bike, I noticed that his fuel line was melted to his cylinder head, which could cause his bike to burn down. And if I had not been required to judge it so thoroughly, I would not have been able to send him that text message earlier that said, "Hey, dude, don't ride your bike. You might die." So no offense to him, because I love his bike. It's an amazing bike. But at the same time, it was like, because I was implied to do my job correctly as a judge, I saw that and was able to address it with him. Not that that's the reason for it, but it does. It requires you to really pay attention to every aspect of the bike. And you guys have given us 10 criterion to pay attention to, that only one of them is a personal decision.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
And then another one, which is funny, you guys put it on there, which I think you need to eliminate, is it rideable? Does it look like a rider? And if it's in the show, it rode. So every person got a 10 from me.
but this is the thing. Like, in the rideability class, it's asking you, are the wheels aligned, or is the spacing been done right? Is there clearance, like where it should be in the fender and the front end? Like, because you see a lot of guys, beautiful bikes, and I've seen them all the time, man, and sitting on the kickstand, the front wheel is leaning against the top leg of the Springer, and it's like,
Yeah, you don't know. So this brings me to another point. Like, with the magazine and the years involved in being, a traveler, have you found yourself like becoming more and feeling more responsibility to generate or cultivate culture in all this?
I do, almost to an unhealthy point. Like, I'm constantly preaching to the guys of my generation that, like, it's our turn to do this stuff. It's our turn to fuel it. Yeah. The reason I do so many events, and I hold shows, and I push promoters to give us money to fuel custom motorcycle stuff, is not because, at the end of the day, for the amount of time I spend out here, I'm probably making, $235 an hour. You know what I mean? But it's not about my personal economy as much as it is the future of custom motorcycling. Because there was once upon a time. You're fired. Is it me? Oh,
is that you?
Once upon a time, I was in a really bad place in my life. Like, I had a rough childhood and shit. And like, when I finally found my way to motorcycle people, I feel like it saved my life. It turned my life around. I was heading in a bad direction and had done some shit.
You were working at a titty bar.
Well, no, that was when things actually started turning around. At this point, I was picking up felonies and all kind of shit, dude. So motorcycle people turned me around. They taught me respect. They taught me, how to be a man and take care of myself, take care of my bike. And, back then, a lot of the motorcycle culture was made up of ex-military guys. And, they, even though in the subculture that was the motorcycle life, there was a very military way about it, and it was a little bit different of a thing, but
just seeing, like, your involvement with the IMS shows, and the Greasing Gears thing, that's been y'all's garage, So that was at Rock Rally the year before last and last year as well, or what? Yeah. So there's been constant things that your name has been associated with that's something for people to enjoy, and builders and painters and other people to showcase, just like your magazine. You know what I mean? So, I would look at it, and I find myself in the same boat sometimes, feeling like shit. No one's doing anything. Fuck it. Now I'm thinking about it. Now I got a plan, and now next thing you know, we're hosting this and that and that. And so it's like, I was wondering, like, the drive for it. Do you feel like you get the respect that you feel like you should get for it? Not that we're all looking for that, but do you think it could grow bigger? Or?
My wife would say that I get the respect that I'm doing. Like, I never really pay attention. In my head, I'm still, like, when I came into this whole thing, I was the young kid. All the guys that I looked up to, Keith Ball, Mike Lichter, and Rogue, and like guys that were working in the magazines forever and stuff. Like, they will always be the true professionals out here, and the true. I'm still just one of the kids in my mind, but I do think that I'm old enough now that it's my obligation to take it to the next place and make sure that, the rallies are headed to a homogenized place. Let's bring motorcycling back into them. Yeah. If there's not enough riding in them, let's host a ride and take people on a ride and show them. I mean, dude, I've been all over this place, and I know Galveston doesn't have the same kind of riding as like Sturgis, Cherokee, North Carolina, or Sturgis, South Dakota. But there's a pirate bar. If you ride a half an hour south of here, there's a pirate bar right on the ocean that's like totally badass. You got to go over a little bridge, and like there's some cool beaches and shit. I found all kind of cool stuff here. Going like out that little peninsula and going to Seawolf Park and hanging out the submarine and the destroyer for a day and taking a tour of that stuff. There's plenty of stuff to do here that's fun, you know. And that's just like we were inspired and we were shown, even in Daytona. You know, Daytona, people talk shit on, why do you even go to Daytona Bike Week? There's nowhere to ride there. There's a place called the Wildlife Loop. If you've never,
I did that.
That's a whole reason to go there.
I think a lot of people listen to this and heard like I've really gave Daytona a really hard rap because this year was my first time going and I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the people I was around, but I guess I'm kind of over the rally. I'm over the rally shit, and then I noticed, and I'm comparing it to Sturgis, right? And Sturgis is like the perfect rally in a sense, and so you have you're in Daytona. And everybody's life is still going on, and you're trying to party, and so it's just it's like the town's too big for the rally now.
Yeah,
it's almost like it needs to be moved further somewhere. I don't know. Like I said, I've only been once, so I don't really think I don't think I've earned the right to judge it. But
no, it's kind of like that, man. It's kind of always been like that, I think, with Daytona. You know, each rally has its own personality like that. You know, I've been to tons of stuff like that where, like I said, what about a Lone Star and a city of Galveston is so nice is everybody here wants to work with the rally. I mean, you get a couple oddballs in the daily paper that are bitching about traffic and stuff like that.
It's
but
just something for them to write about. Yeah.
When you have the city behind you, man, like the city is here, that's an unusual thing. It's something to be really proud of, you know.
Something to add to that too. You remember when we had the hurricane last year?
Yeah.
So Harvey rolled through, and originally it was slated to build my bike for Hot Bike Tour, and money and time and all kinds of things happened. And we came down to do hurricane relief. Well, everybody was like, "Oh man, is the rally going to happen? Is the rally going to happen?" But man, the city was like, "Hell yeah, it's going to happen. That's a revenue stream. We want you guys to come. We're good." We didn't, and they didn't get hit hard, but what did get affected, the entire area, the entire city, everybody was like, come on, we're open for business, man. Let's do this thing, because they're really welcoming here, which I think is amazing. And like you said earlier, it's kind of like a season ender. Everybody just wants another reason to get out here and come hang out.
Yeah, it's like because right after this, I mean, it's the beginning of November, so the next step after this is holidays. So you're stuck doing family stuff, and you got to put all your toys away, I guess, for some folks, and this is like the last let loose party. You know, old lady titties out. Not really. I don't ever see them, but I know they're out somewhere.
And I'll tell you what, the party part of it, the Strand is about to go down tonight, because boy, that shit is off the hook.
But it is, like the thing that I loved about Sturgis, and the other thing that I found out the last 2 years, I've been doing Sturgis for 5 years, and I've done this rally since 09. Or no, not 09, 11, I think, is the first time I came down here. And like I was saying earlier, I get kind of burnt out on the revving the bikes and the chrome and the LED lights and all this other stuff. And it's not so much the bikes, it's just I'm not inspired by anything. So I'll come into this rally, I'm not like seeing a group or a group of bikers that are like fucking doing cool shit. It's just like, it hasn't been that. But what I found for me is the smaller events, the more grassroots events. I've started to have more fun with that and felt more like that was my home. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's cool, but I'm gonna give you a different perspective on that, because here's the deal. Undeniably, big rallies like this they will get more support. They get more of the Allstate money, the Progressive money, the Geico money, the Budweiser money. They're getting more revenue to support things here. It's up to us what the rally's going to support. You know what I mean? Like, so us taking programs like In Motion or the beach racing and coming to these people and saying, hey, look, it's great that you have the Boogie Light Street Glad guys here. That's awesome. I'm glad they're here. But
Boogie Light. Do
you know that just for a couple bucks, we could also have the Panhead Knucklehead guys here?
Yeah.
And just for a couple bucks, we can have the vintage guys here. We learned in Sturgis was a few years ago, me being a member of the AMCA, I suggested to the property owners at the Iron Horse in Sturgis, that's like our home base, that we just do a thing called Vintage Day, and we invite anybody with an AMCA card comes in and gets free lunch on us and hang out, bring your bike, park it right inside for the day. We give out a couple awards and stuff. They're all like old AMCA style awards, oldest rider, longest ride, all that shit like that. But just by showing them that kind of respect and saying, hey, there is a place here for you, tons of guys come out like that. You know what I mean?
Basically what it sounds like, and this is kind of what I was saying as well, is like you have to find ways to make something that's big like this small.
Yeah.
And so having the smaller events or the smaller groups of people, like your ride that you were talking about, y'all went on yesterday, and this thing that you were explaining to me today about what you want to do here next year, it's about making it smaller so that people that have a different connection to different parts of this motorcycle scene they feel like they have a home here.
And right around the time you talked about getting here, that's kind of when we started coming out here and doing our little. It started with our one-day bike show that we do, and then the next.
By the way, I won the custom paint show in 2000. I won the custom paint award.
Yeah. I
still haven't got my trophy.
Dude, that is so Cycle Source right there.
And the whole reason for the podcast is now revealed.
Oh shit, that shit was. Yeah, it was. That was like my funnest year here. But y'all did the ride-in show. I had a big ass bagger. It was all airbrushed out and everything. And it was like me and my buddies put in there like, fuck, we're gonna go fuck with these chopper guys down here. Watch this. And then I fucking won the thing. And it was like, I thought it was cool because, like I said, I felt like we were kind of infringing on y'all's turf, but y'all were like, "Here's a award. That paint job's badass." I'm like, "Jokes on me."
See, man, and that's like, for me, cool has no boundaries. I don't see brands, I don't see styles, I don't see races and age groups and everything else. Like, cool is cool, and that's just what it is. And I think that's the benefit. Like, I'm sort of on the edge of two generations, you know what I mean? And like where we're going now and all of this, those things are disappearing. Those boundaries are disappearing, man. Like, it's a very old mindset to be separate like that, So as much as I think it's cool, and I'll just say this name just to talk about one of them, but events like Babes Ride Out.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. I think women taking their place in motorcycling is fantastic. 30% or better of Cycle Source readers are women. I'm so proud of that.
Yeah.
We have a young, diverse audience. I'm so proud of that. I don't think there's a need for separating anymore. I don't think there's a need to say this is a woman's ride, this is a Hispanics ride, this is a men's only ride. Like this is just a ride. You don't get any special credit for anything other than you're here. Awesome. You know what I mean? But as we move into the future, what this thing is going to look like, tearing those walls down and not looking for special credit on any specific direction or niche that you fill, that's going to be where the best part of it goes. Well,
I think that's the hard part about it, though. I think it's hard. Like, you look at what Babes Ride Out is, and you look at all the different women, sects that came out, sections. You see all these things come out, and it's more just a way of people taking something that's big, like the industry, and not dumbing it down, but making it smaller and more compacted that fits them and makes them feel important or like they're really a part of something.
Well, and I think that in their defense too, Babes Ride Out, even though it being a separate and isolated, type instance where they're segregating themselves, they're trying to encourage and empower women to be more involved, which is one way to look at it. But at the same time, I think that there is an isolation there, which doesn't create a unity and a growth together. It does create a separation, which I don't think is completely healthy, but I do applaud them for the work they do to try to encourage and grow. No, I'm not saying you're talking down to that at all, but I see that, but I agree with you. I think that it needs to be more inclusive, so you have that, but also be a part of something bigger, because that's unity.
And a lot of the girls that are part of running Babes Ride Out, they participate in a whole bunch of stuff. But what I'm saying is, like, you want to truly empower women. Just show up and just refuse to be treated as anything different than another rider that's there. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go off on your own and separate yourself from everything and say, look, this is who we are. You can just show up at bike night next Wednesday in your hometown and say, yeah, I'm a woman and I ride a motorcycle. Kiss my ass if you don't like it. Yeah.
So we did just get back from Hot Bike Tour. And the one thing that I thought was amazing, so Crystal went with us, and my bike didn't run for a couple of days, so I didn't exactly get to be awesome like everybody and ride through the canyons, like going down 60 from Pine Top to Phoenix, but Crystal did, and she hauls ass, dude. Like, she told me how all the guys were kind of like, a little concerned, like maybe how was she going to ride and all this stuff. And no, she follows them just as hard as they follow each other. And they were like, damn, you can ride. So, no, I agree with you 100%. Just show up and be a part of the crowd and refuse to be isolated, I think, is better than anything.
And then listen, like, this is coming from a time where when I grew up on motorcycles, I started my first Harley I had when I was 20 years old. 19 years old, working in a body shop in Pittsburgh. There was a woman that I rode with that taught me about riding for real. And a lot of women didn't ride then. Like, I would regularly see people spit at this woman and call her a lesbian and all kind of shit. And she didn't take no shit from no man.
Yeah.
She would get into a fist fight in a drop of a hat. She had respect for herself. She carried herself like a woman, a person. You know what I mean? It was... So I have mad respect for women like that. I have mad respect for women, whether they're on two wheels or not, that will show up and be people and, you know, and carry themselves in that manner, you know?
I don't even know where we're going with all this.
The separation, making things smaller.
Yeah.
But like you said about that, you go to an event like Sturgis, right? Yeah, I know I talk too much. I should slow down.
No, we're good.
You go to Sturgis, and there's the one big thing that everything's coming together for.
Yeah.
But there's a vintage day. There's a, you know,
FXR
what do they call
show
the bells? The
Biker bells.
The biker bells, where they have a day for women that ride, and you know, there's all kind of different stuff. There's Aiden's Ride, that's a charity for a children's charity ride. There's all kind of individual stuff that goes on out of that one big thing. But when we have that unity, we truly have power, because we can get the kind of funding to make things happen.
Yeah,
you know,
what I promote a lot, especially when it comes to Sturgis, I try to. Everybody knows me as the anti-trailer guy. You know, like, I try to encourage most people to ride, and I think that a good Sturgis trip starts with a good ride to Sturgis, and I think that is the place that most people will find the most memories of Sturgis, is on the trips and all the riding. Because obviously you get to Sturgis, you get to most of these rallies, there's plenty to go on. There's plenty. You said the best thing earlier about this event that you were talking about here, is that when people are blasting 1,000+ miles to get to your spot, there's supposed to be a cold beer ready for them and a party, right? And I think that gets lost. It has gotten lost. Did I remember a point in time where you go to Rot Rally, and it still might be this way. I didn't get to go this year, but last year we went. It makes more sense not to bring your bike and just bring your golf cart and your shit. And I've seen rallies come and go in the past that went from like a bike event to now it's adult bikers rally, and it's literally just a bunch of naked old people
and you
running
know
around.
what, man? Like, this is our responsibility.
Exactly.
It is. Like, it's our responsibility to come to Lone Star, to go to Rot Rally and say, look, we want some motorcycle shit happening here.
Yeah.
We want you to make this more a part of motorcycling. And like I just said about women or any other group, show up and demand to be treated as an equal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they should have as much respect for the vintage culture there, the custom culture, you know, all the different age demographics. They should think about that like that. It's their responsibility, and it's ours too.
Yeah.
You know?
That, you know, once again, my listeners are probably mad at me, but I'm gonna quote my buddy Zombie Mike again. It's our responsibility to carry on this motorcycle culture for the next generation. So our generation is responsible. So, and he said, I don't want to be the person that lets it fall under my watch. And that's the truth, man. It's like, you know, a lot of us, whether we're in positions of some type of influence or not, or just builders or whatever, it's like you can't always like just look at the aspect of like what can you take from the industry. You got to look at the industry like, if I keep taking it and I don't put anything back in it, then this thing's gonna be dried up.
Yep.
And you know, so yeah,
I made my living from this shit here for 22 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At different levels and different capacity. I mean, but I owe that.
Yeah.
I owe that for 2 decades of my life that I've been doing this stuff. Like, you know, I tell the guys that work with me on the magazine all the time, things get heavy, especially at the end of a year like this year. This year was insane. I'm going to blow my own brains out at the end of this year, let alone how they felt about it. So we get the end of this year and everybody's getting grumpy and shit, and I look at them, I'm like, look at you go. Don't you ever forget that there's a guy going to work 9 to 5. He hates his wife and his kids, hates his job, and the only relief he's going to get from that is listening to your shit and knowing that there's somebody out there living this life.
Yeah.
I said, you lucky bastard. Don't you ever forget that guy, right? Because he might get to go to one of these things this year.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point.
One of the things I try to preach to my kids is, you know, we were talking about influence. You don't know who's watching you. Like sometimes there's somebody who you have no idea who it is that is looking up to you. And my daughter has learned that lesson. But myself, I mean, man, I'm blessed. I get to work on motorcycles and go to cool places and see cool people and do cool shit. Yeah. And all the time. And I hear people that come to these events and rallies that complain about it, that are working it. Well, it's because, like you said, they're not paying it back into the industry. Yeah. They look at it as a meal ticket, whereas they need to look at it as a sustenance and a growth of culture and creating something that's exciting and, you know, find the roots of why you did it to begin with, get back into it, make that a part of what it is, plant the seeds, and make sure that we're creating interest and growth all the time, because then it stays cool.
Yeah, that, you know, like, I think with shops too, like, you know, you don't see a lot of shops like putting on rides, putting on events at events like this. Like, Cycle Source Magazine's throwing a ride for, you know, this, that, and the other. How come some shop that's here with a big ass tent ain't doing that? Like, isn't that the purpose? You know, riding these things or just feeling cool?
No, I thought the purpose of this rally was to come install handlebars and exhaust. No offense to my handlebar and exhaust crowd. Just want to preface that or postface that.
You gotta be giving more, man. Is what I'm boiling down to, and the experience side of things. You know what I mean? Like the rally is supposed to be an experience. The bike getting built is supposed to be an experience. You know, and when some of these shops can't, you know, not to start talking shit about shops, but when some of them can't get the bike built right, and so they're here having a bad experience on a bike that's built bad, and it's just a total.
That's part of it, though. That's part of it. You know what I mean? Like being drunk in the back parking lot of the Iron Horse in Daytona and missing the races. That's part of it. There's stages that you have to go through, you know. But at the end of the day, man, like, looking at the whole thing and looking at everything that's available here and the shit that goes on, like, this is an American culture. Shit like this doesn't happen other places. And I've been to, you know, like EICMA and shows overseas and stuff. I've been to some of that stuff, and it's cool, man. It's not like this. You know, like, every once in a while we just all get together and let our asses out, you know?
That's a good point, yeah.
And it's okay. Most of the time.
So with all the changes, you know, like, how, you know, I don't want you to tell people how the magazine's doing, but just how is, like do you still feel confident with the magazine in the new age of things? Or
I do, man, because like I said, the magazine, you know, where I think a lot of my competitors, they always looked at the other media streams as the enemy. You know, they wanted to insulate their magazine from these other things and talk about, you know, why magazines were better and why magazines weren't going to go anywhere. I know magazines aren't going to go anywhere. Their role may change and change back and change and change back. Magazines are always going to be a part of shit, because just like you said, there's something about it. There's a characteristic of it that people still want, you know, in whatever capacity. But what I do believe is we have the ultimate strength by centering all of our media around the magazine, because, like Lone Star, for instance, we started doing promotions for In Motion and our bike show and everything that we're doing here this weekend. We started doing it 4 months ago, right? Yeah. So we're doing social media, we're doing stuff in the magazine, we're doing interviews on our podcast the whole way up to while we're here. Then we start doing Facebook Live stuff while we're here. Then as we come away from this, we'll have posts going out the door. And then in about 2 months, we're going to do a whole issue on being at Lone Star Rally, and then 2 months after that, it's all going to get published in our blog and live there forever. So if you look at what a well organized magazine can do today as a media outlet by using all of that media, you have 6 or 8 months worth of promoting one thing that you're doing, with hundreds of entry points. You know what I mean? So it really gives you the best of both worlds, because the best social media influencer out there today has a 30-day lifespan. You know what I mean? Like, they talk about, oh, I'm going to this thing next month, and they get there, I'm here, and then it's over, and it's gone, and they're on to the next thing that they're doing. Yeah. And that's important. I mean, the impact of social media influencers is great, but it doesn't have that lifespan. Anybody that knows anything about the motorcycle community, it's like turning a big ship. You know, I have people here this weekend. This is the second year of In Motion. I have some of the biggest names in this shit in that show down there. And just now people are starting to turn around and go, what is this in motion thing?
Yeah.
So it really takes a long time to turn that big ship. So by having that 8 months worth of constantly throwing media at people in different ways and, you know, different channels, like it's the only way that you can be healthy as a media outlet today, you know.
Well, I think it's good that you've embraced all the free media pretty much. I mean, it's all relatively free. I mean, I know the podcasts and the different equipments and things involved make it more expensive, but realistically, you know, social media, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you know, it's technically free for the most part, you know, and you just got to do it.
To do it well, there's a good bit of cost in it.
Yeah.
I mean, to do it well, you have to fine tune it with little dollars here and there all the time. You have to spend a lot of time keeping up on the programs, the software you're using, the best way to use them. Like even now, we sat down here today and Chris was telling me about an audio issue that I need to address. So I'll spend 12 hours figuring out how to make that go away. Mm-hmm. And that's the investment of time, you know. So
well, it's just good to see that you're using all of the tools that are available instead of you know, like I said, like a lot of magazines, I've seen the decline in it, but I've also not seen people in those arenas of those magazines taking advantage of the other opportunities that are out there. It's almost like they felt invincible or something, like, oh,
well, man, I'll tell you what, I'll sum it up for you. I was at a media event when the Harley Milwaukee 8s first came out, right?
Yeah.
And I won't say the name of the person or the name of the magazine, but I was getting breakfast because as a magazine publisher, one of the great benefits is when the motorcycle companies come out with a motorcycle, something new, they fly all of the media to a place in the country and we get to ride them and use their photographers and their motorcycles, and it's totally badass.
It's awesome. Yeah.
They put you up in a nice hotel and they feed you and all this shit. So I go out to this thing for Harley's new Milwaukee 8 launch, and you know, I do what I do. As soon as I'm on my way, I'm social media, I hit the ground, I'm social media, I do a video when I first see the motorcycles and stuff. The next morning at breakfast when we're getting ready to ride, one of the other magazine guys is there, and he's holding a little roundtable discussion with a bunch of the other media guys, and they're all bitching about social media and it's a shame that magazines are going away. They're magazine people. And he's bitching about how magazines are going away, and it's a shame that we can't do things as fast as social media, and there's no way to compete. And I walked up to the table and I went, do you guys mind if I sit here? And they said, no, go ahead. So I sat for a couple minutes and I'm eating my eggs, man, and I'm listening to them bitch like this. And he says, yeah, too bad we just can't find a way to be as fast as them. And I went, you could. And I'd just eat my eggs, and it was like I farted in church, right? They all stopped talking, they looked at me. It was like they just realized I sat down, right? And they were like, what do you mean, blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, man, I said, listen, not because you're one of my competitors. I said, pull up your magazine social media account. And I'm flipping through it. I said, look at that. I said, you haven't done a fucking thing since we've been here. I said, if I was your editor, your publisher, I'd fire you. Mm-hmm. And he was offended, mad, wildly offended. I said, I'm not trying to be a dickhead. I said, just hear me out. I said, look, I've done 4 or 5 Instagram posts. I've done a Facebook Live video. I said, Harley Davidson took their money and they flew you here to do this job, right? I said, you're going to wait. You're telling me you're going to wait another 60 days to bring this information to your readers. In that time, social media is going to have this shit covered. I said, but right now, you have the exclusive on this. You could take this to your readers right now through social media if you would just engage them that way.
Yeah.
And he said, well, my magazine doesn't pay me to do all that shit. And I went, there you go, motherfucker. I said, and that's the problem, because I own my magazine. I said, you are the kind of person that should just go get a job doing something else. I said, yeah, it sucks. It sucks that you have to do 10 times the work for half the money anymore. Nobody wishes that was different than me, but that's the job. That's the gig.
Yeah.
You want the job or not, because that's what it takes.
That's exactly what's happened for a lot of us, like physical, you know, laborers in businesses.
Right.
Like not only do we have to be a skilled, you know, fabricator like Moose is, or a painter or whatever, we also have to be a marketer, you know, and all these other things online now that it's like you said, it's like, yeah, it sucks because I'm not getting paid to do it. But, you know, the truth is that if I don't do it, I'm going to be squashed by someone who is.
You want the gig.
100%. And, you know, when I first got involved with the company that I was formerly a part of, I was super enthusiastic. It was something new to me. I'd never worked on motorcycles before. I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm all in.
Yeah.
And so you saw my social media. It was every day. everything I did that was cool, I posted it because I wanted to create enthusiasm for the brand and the company. And I knew that by doing that, it supported my paycheck.
Yeah.
It grew the business. I didn't get paid to do that. I did it because it was my obligation to create attention for the thing that we were creating, to do that. And the repercussion from that came to where people are like, well, Moose, people think you own the fucking company. And I'm like, maybe it's because I'm the only person passionate enough in this fucking company to post about what we're doing in a way that's honest and forthright, to where I'm just trying to share our experiences and what cool shit we're doing to create economy for us. I'm not doing it to steal your thunder, brother.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it because I think what we're doing is cool and I want people to know about it. Maybe you should put your 2 cents in. And the response was, well, I mean, that takes time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, then go do it. Because I do it because I'm excited about what I do, not because I'm trying to steal your attention.
Well, there's those shops, like you see them at rallies like this. What is that, like I think I've referenced them before, but like strip club choppers. You remember? I don't even know who the fuck those people are.
Johnny Lang.
He's at everything, and I don't even know if they have social media, but they just seem like they're doing fine. And that's, and I think there's people out there. There's shops. Like, this is their social media, these events, because I saw them everywhere I would go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, that's your social media, and you're still okay because you're here, and you're making it. But I feel like, with the social media now, all these garage builders that are talented, all these painters, and it's just free, man. It's there. Just pick it up, hit record, or take a picture. Tell people what you think about that. And,
Well, you got to remember too, social media is a lot like cocaine.
Okay.
Right? I mean, cocaine's not going to make you a superhero. If anything, cocaine, what we've learned this was way in my past, but I'll still talk about it like I have knowledge on it. It intensifies your personality.
Yeah.
So does social media. The problem with that is, if you're an asshole to begin with, you're going to be an asshole in front of everybody, and quick. You know what I mean? So you want to think about what you're doing. It's a loaded gun. You shouldn't let children play with it.
Yeah, it's a different thing, but not. Just back in the bagger culture, like when Misfit got real big, you could just see the other than the Big Wheel thing kind of hitting its peak, the only other peak that was ever hit was the TV show guys, from the build-offs from previous years, and other
than that, it's always been hardworking.
It's just the hard work
people,
guys, and now with social media, it's like guys that I've never even met before in any rallies or anything that are some powerhouse, like Rusty Butcher or some shit, big, huge social media followings because he just works that hustle so hard, And,
like I said, that's one of the good things about where we're headed now, is we're headed into a time of put your money where your mouth is. You know what I mean? So you can social media strategize yourself into the position of being, wildly popular and followed. But real quick here, somebody's going to start asking, but what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? You weld, you paint, you race, show me something.
Influence.
I want to get paid in some of those influence dollars, please.
Yeah.
Is that like one of them Bitcoins or?
Yeah.
See, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
No. Dude, the exposure dollars. That's what I was talking about.
Exposure dollars.
Yeah. Bro, just let me have your thing for free. Well, what are you going to give me in return? Dude, exposure. But exposure doesn't feed my kids.
Yeah.
That's how many Cycle Source t-shirts I have out in the world because of that line? I'm going to do you some advertising, bro. I'm like, I sell advertising, dude. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I fucking do, man.
You're not doing wow. Killing them. Yeah, that's
buy a shirt and wear it, and you're advertising for me, and you're paying me.
This weird, man. So, what, like with with, I don't know if you kind of got the buzz, but with Harley's release of the new Softails last year, and
best fucking thing Harley ever did.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think so.
And the worst at the same time, because the best thing they ever did, coming out with a motorcycle again, that chassis could be 11 different motorcycles.
Yeah.
That was the best thing they ever did. Because the coolest motorcycle there ever was from Harley Davidson was the 1200 Super Glide. it was affordable, and from that point, you could build 14 motorcycles. You could bump it up to an 80 cubic inch bike pretty easy. You could make it into FLH. You could make it FX, FXE. You could do all this shit with it. You could make it cool in your own way. You could put your stamp on it. That's what made that cool. Same thing with the Softails. If they would have just came out with a base model and just said, these are the 14 bikes that you could make it into, right? It would have given the end user the ability to get involved, to customize, to be part of this, to show their personality. Instead, they took the next steps and they just made all 14 of those motorcycles. And they called it a model family. And it's like, damn, dude, it was this close. You were this close.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the bikes themselves, like they 100% ride way better than a Dyna, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, but obviously a lot of people from the Dyna culture had a hard time accepting the triangular swing arm and the, you know, the Softail name. It's almost like they should have just called it anything else in the world and everybody would have been fine.
I agree.
But recently with the plugs of the Pan American, and which I don't know if you caught this, but this is something that's been big in our podcast community and just the shops that we've talked to, is a lot of people dig fucking the adventure bikes. It's a huge thing. That
our own rider, Chopper Charlie, rides one of the biggest, sickest choppers. Been all over the world, like ridden in places that you should not take a motorcycle, let alone an 11-foot chopper. And he has also a BMW adventure bike, and tears ass on it.
Isn't Bill Dodge doesn't he do a big ride out of the country?
They're doing right now.
He goes somewhere.
They're doing
Hogan's Heroes, or I'm saying it.
Burns out there.
Himalayan Heroes.
Yeah, the Himalayan Heroes. Yeah, that looks like an amazing.
That's actually put together by Bear Stoughton from Old Bike Barn. He's the one that heads that whole adventure ride up.
Either a lot of people are dying on the Strand or something, because this is fucking shit going by everything.
I'm hoping that's not what Heather was calling about.
Everything's on fire except where we're parked.
Yeah, the whole world. We're sitting here looking at the beach, and behind us, we're in the Cycle Source van, and so we can't see anything behind us. Galveston's like the apocalypse is taking place right now. No, but you know, with those, you know, like a lot of Dyna kids and like the FXR thing, it's always been about lifted suspension for a lot of these people, and I think it's made the attractiveness of the adventure bike itself more attractive to you know, these younger guys that want to start traveling and riding more, and with you know, like I said, social media through like YouTube and watching all these fucking dudes riding, you know, from here to Argentina and stuff like that. It's just like a new adventure that's just, I think it's becoming more popular, you know. But with Harley jumping on the bandwagon and creating that bike, it created a lot of questions for enthusiasts of adventure bikes, and then knowing how Harley is. Like not really being able to understand how they're going to compete in that market price point wise.
Well, I'm gonna say one name to you, and then we'll talk about, has this happened before? Buell Ulysses.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's not the first time that Harley's dabbled in this. You know, they had Buell almost like as a test market for a lot of the stuff we're starting to see today that Harley did, you know. And the Buell Ulysses was a huge failure, because here we go again with people at the top of a corporation trying to make decisions for people who are truly boots on the ground and enthusiasts in something. Well, adventure bike riders are a completely different crew. And like, if you're going to make a bike for them, you better know exactly what it is that they need. And I'm not saying that Harley did or did not. It remains to be seen. The market is out. You know what I mean? The jury's out to see what's going to happen with that. But it's a very specific audience, you know. And a lot of times today, I sort of compare where Harley's Davidson is at today with the AMF years. And I know, like, I just heard right through your recorder, I heard a giant gasp of people that are going to send me hate mail for a fucking month. But hear me out. Like, really, Harley Davidson in a lot of ways is kind of unsure of where they are in the market and who their customers are, almost exactly like they were in the AMF years. So they're trying so many different things, and they're reaching out to this and they're reaching out to that, and they're looking for the next craze and fad and direction, and they're doing it all at one time, man. And like, you know, it's
almost like they're all in on their cards right now, you know. With I'm not a huge well, go ahead.
Well, and to that, like, the thing is like they're making so many different attempts to try to ingest culture that doesn't exist by crossing markets, like getting into adventure bikes and stuff like that. Unfortunately, there's not a whole bunch of Harley Davidson dudes out there that are just like, I'm an adventure rider. Yeah, I'm gonna spend $12,000 or $15,000 on your adventure bike.
Did you ever see that Bloomberg article that got written about Harley, and they're talking about they're not particularly proud of the culture that they have connected to their bikes. Like me and John from Purpose Build did a whole fucking 4 hour and 45-minute podcast referencing that fucking that article, just talking about, like, I know it's not Harley's words, but it sounded so familiar, like it was from their words. And so we were kind of pissed. We were like, dude, like, you got other companies like Indian. When Indian tried to resurgence their stuff back in the big wheel days, they were reaching out to everybody. John Show, fucking everybody. Y'all, hey, can you make us parts so we can have an aftermarket so that our bikes will sell? And then you got Harley, who is literally trying to slit the throats of every aftermarket parts manufacturer that's out there.
Even in a lot of ways, I mean, I hate to be this critical, but even I feel bad for a lot of Harley's dealer principals. You know what I mean? Because if you look at these guys 10 years ago, the dealer principal made money from all of the upgrades, custom paint sets, bigger motors, big bore kits, like all that stuff. Now it all comes in your jacket. In your finance jacket, man. Like, you got the bigger motor, you got the paint set, you got all the custom parts you need. Like, there's very little anything else for the dealer to do but babysit Harley customers. And now, I mean, they just announced a couple weeks ago that they're going to enter the Amazon market. So even in soft parts now, Harley Davidson's going to start selling their clothing, motor clothes apparel, through Amazon. Like, their dealers are losing their fucking minds, man.
Dude, yeah, and that's definitely going to be a cheaper market for, And
it's... the basis of it is a whole other conversation about ravenous capitalism versus responsible capitalism and where we stand on that in America. And that gets into politics and all kind of other shit that just has no place on a motorcycle show, so I won't do that. But
I've heard the term ravenous capitalism on your motorcycle show numerous times.
Because I believe in that. I believe ravenous capitalism is bullshit.
Just to educate me, what is that? What is the terms of that?
Ravenous capitalism. So the United States and all the great companies, let's say Harley Davidson, Hershey, Anheuser-Busch, all the great companies of these United States, along with building a business and a brand and a product, they built communities and schools and amusement parks. It literally was the foundation that built America. Yeah. Right? They were responsible for everything. Like, that's everywhere you went. In St. Louis, Budweiser built that city. They built the community around it, everything. Hershey built that city. So
kind of what happened with Detroit, before everything left,
When we got to this new system of capitalism, which I'm probably the only person that says ravenous capitalism, but it's ravenous in the sense that it doesn't matter what the product that you make anymore. It sure as fuck doesn't matter the community that your company serves around it. The only thing that matters is your shareholders. And having a good quarterly report, having happy shareholders, that's the number one priority for business in this country anymore. And it can't be that way. Yeah. It can't be that way. You can't sacrifice the lives and happiness of the families and the people that work for you, of the community that you exist in. It's irresponsible.
Going down that path, there can't be the end game of that path is like a bubble. It's going to have to burst, and then when it bursts, then you're either going to have companies going out of business, just like Detroit. And behind it, those companies, because too big to fail, right? The banks, the auto manufacturers, the government will step in and they'll spend taxpayer money to make sure the businesses don't fail. But look at the fucking wreckage of the community around them, man. I mean, Detroit is a third world country still. How many years has it been since the whole economic burst? And Detroit's no more habitable now than shortly thereafter. I mean, it's just wreckage. And behind that, family values and respect and so many other social issues that we face today, moving through another generation, go along with that. It's a real strange thing. Like, just looking at, you can feel that capitalist is, whichever term,
ravenous capitalism.
You can feel that happening. You can see it, and it's like, dude, like, how, like, in so many things. It's happening in the paint industry as well. You just see all these people that are just like grabbing. It's like they're in a fucking those little money air blowing things where they're just trying to grab all the dollars, and who gives a fuck if it blows up after they walk out? They got their money, and it's not gonna be good. I think it's gonna bubble and burst, and we're gonna have a weird world here in a couple of years.
Well, and that could be in a subconscious manner. It could be where the post-millennial generation is starting to get away from technology and going back to learning to work with their hands. You know, and learning to have more tactile experiences because they want to become more grounded. I mean, you know, when I grew up, I would get up in the morning. My old man was a Marine. I ran a trap line before school, and that was because you could sell furs to subsidize your income. Like, we did all kind of shit like that to make extra money. Pick myrtle in the summer for the landscapers. Like, you could do all kind of extra stuff to make a little bit of money here and there. What's out there now? What's out? You're gonna, you know, send your kids to be a Walmart greeter or work at some coffee stand or some dumb shit like that. You know, not all kids are cut out for stuff like that, man. I wouldn't have been coming up. I worked at McDonald's for like 2 days. You know.
Fucking quit. Fuck you, Dale. You don't know how to fucking flip burgers. What do you think about it?
One of the things I try to preach to any younger person that is looking for what it is they're going to do when they grow up and what are they going to do to earn a revenue. I hear these kids say, "Oh, I'm going to college, this and that." And I'm like, "What are you going to do? But what do you want to do?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Do you want to go spend 4 to 10 years doing the thing that, I mean, if you're doing 10, obviously you have a goal, but if you're just doing 4 years to get all your core classes and everything locked down, like, do you have a target? Are you going to go be productive? How about you don't go gain that $30, $40, $50,000 of debt? How about you go be someone's bitch?
Yeah.
In an industry that you love. Like, go find, what do you like to do? Like, that's it. What do you like to do? How do you want to make your money? What do you like to do? Find somebody who's doing it really well and making money and go be their bitch.
What I've noticed with that happening is that people compare themselves to the people they watch and follow on Instagram and different social media platforms, and they become impatient and they end up not wanting to spend. My boy Marcus had a good point. He said 9 years is how long you have to put in work to really make a profit.
Yeah.
So 9 years of learning a craft, a trade, or anything, going to be a doctor, all that shit. I mean,
I've been welding for 25 years.
Yeah. So it's I don't know, man. It's a weird deal, but.
And going back to you asking me, like, do I feel a responsibility, all this stuff now? And, how did I get to that point of what do I want to do with my life? Dude, I dropped out of high school in 10th grade, had 2 felonies from selling dope before all this. Can't spell, I'm bad at math, and I publish a fucking magazine. Like, it is only through the fact that I found something that I'm passionate about and I work very hard at that I have anything to do out here at all. It's because once you are passionate, you can overcome adversity. You can overcome obstacles. You can find people that will help you along the way because they believe in what you're doing, because it's coming out of you. It's coming out of your heart and your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a zero failure mentality too that I think propels people like that, because like for me and my buddy Neil, we say the same thing to each other all the time. It's like, people ask us, "Hey, I mean, what if you don't finish?" No, there's no what if I don't finish. There's not a failure mentality here. Like, you have to finish the thing you start, and that's what propels. That's the perpetual motion that gets you to the end.
When I started my magazine, I would send guys out to parties, to cover parties and shit, with those little disposable, remember the cardboard cameras you would take to the photo hut?
Get them at like Walgreens and shit.
Yeah. So last night, my photographer that's here with me, that she actually works under Michael Lichter. She studies under him, and she's shooting bikes for me, and she goes, "So what would you use here, like an F4.5 or?" And I went, I don't know what any of those numbers mean, right? I said, that's you and Michael talk. She said, "Will you take all kind of pictures?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know how I learned how to take pictures? I had a manual camera, and I would listen. I kept a notebook of the pictures I was on and what roll I was on." I said, "And I would hear the sound of the lens. And when that shutter made the right noise, I could tell when the shutter was making the right noise, and I was going to get a good picture." I said, other than that, I said, all them fucking numbers and shit that you guys talk about, I said, that's egghead shit. I just don't have the random access memory to keep track of that.
How long does this need to stay open to catch how much light in order to get the picture that I think looks cool?
It's the triangle, man. It's the triangle, right? The ISO and the shutter speed and the aperture. It's all connected.
Dude, I'm such a caveman with shit like that. I'm just like, oh, and now with the screen, you can look automatically. Yeah, that one sucks. Take another one, change this, turn that a little bit, click, click, click.
Delete. Well, what really motivated you to start the podcast?
and I'll say this openly, like, I know nothing about podcasts. So the podcast was just it was like a B line of us doing a Facebook Live broadcast. I had a chance, like a year and a half ago, I started doing a series of interviews for the Buffalo Chip.
Yeah.
And they brought me in, and it was when Facebook just started doing the side-by-side broadcasting, where you could have someone come in and have two people carry on a conversation side by side. And I was like, man, that's the shit. Like, to see people have a conversation, what if we could have 3 or 4 or 5 people like that?
Yeah.
And I started doing research about it, and I found my way to different software that you could do this through, OBS, and a bunch of different Wirecast and shit like that. And I started figuring out how I wanted to do that. Eventually led to taking Grease and Gears to a different place, because we put it all through there. And I decided that having a show where we sat down once a week and invited people just to come into a conversation that I was having with Ken anyway, because about once a week we would get together on the phone and just pitch a bitch about whatever was going on. So I was like, dude, we should just do this in front of everybody. And it was real primitive when we started, and like, as we learned more, it got a little bit better.
Same with ours.
He plugged it in as a podcast, and he was like, people are going to really dig this as a podcast. This is how we should, we should make sure that we have this part of it too. So that was all him, because he's been doing, excuse me, he's been doing a thing called Forever Two Wheels for a while.
Yeah. So that's his podcast?
Okay. And it's a great library of stuff, guys that have been passed away now that will always be able to go and listen to their voices and stuff, and it's really cool. And I love that part of it. I love that it becomes a library to take you back to that moment where you could actually talk to that person. But for me, the visual part of it, and doing that, almost like TV broadcast visual, like when we do the live broadcast, we can fly in video, we can fly in websites and actually work on websites, and change cameras and do stuff. And I love the the dynamic of that environment. So for me, that's my part of it. I dig.
Yeah, we want to evolve into that as well. It's just that it's hard. We don't have a big. It's really just me and my brother every once in a while. But the podcast thing it started making more sense. You've met Dan, right? Danger Dan.
Yeah.
So I did a podcast with him. He had me come onto his podcast, and then I was like, fuck, man, like, what's this whole thing we're doing here? And then I go home, and like for a year I'm like diving deep into all the different, the Joe Rogans and the other.
Dude, Joe Rogan is my fucking hero.
Yeah.
I just listened to his Netflix special.
Oh, the fucking
the World
Strange
of Times. Yeah, dude. I'm all about the Harvey and Weinstein part of that. We're so sexist against men in this country anymore.
Yeah, dude. He had a great fucking point, and he's actually been talking about that on some of his recent podcasts as well. That's been fucking awesome. But yeah, dude, that so all that stuff, it just like, fuck, man, like, this is something real. And then I started doing a little bit of like research into the motorcycle world, and like I said before, there's a lot of people doing it, but not a lot of people doing it. It's kind of weird. Like, some people will try it and then they'll do 2 podcasts and then they'll never do anything else, or they'll do it and they'll have really, really bad audio or whatever, and then they just don't work out those bugs through time. Like you said, it's primitive. Like, when you first start this shit, it takes time to get used to talking to a mic, getting rid of your comfort words. Like, I used to say, here's the deal. Like, people would be like, dude, we listen to your podcast. We just started a drinking game. So every time you say, here's the deal, we all drink.
Mine's right on.
I was about to say, you could search right on and probably find it 40,000 times in everything that Chris has audio on. That's his big one. Shit. And it's funny too, because Heather says it too.
Does she?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I started catching that recently. I was listening, and she's like, right on. I was like, damn, it's rubbing off.
Dude, have you ever like done like interviews with people from like different areas of the country, and they have those comfort words, and the next thing you know, you're talking like them?
Oh yeah, I take that shit with me.
Dude, every time I talk to anybody,
don't you know, eh?
Oh sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I did every time I talk to those New York and Jersey dudes, it's like, yo, dude, you got it. And the next thing you know, I'm like, yo, man, what's going on? And it's like, oh shit. Or my NorCal homies with hella. I'm like, I never use that word, and all of a sudden, here I am, hella this, hella that.
And even RJ says right on in text messages.
Yeah.
Like, I texted him the other day. I was like, man, I'm making it out the door. I got to be there in 4 hours from Dallas to Galveston, and he was like, right on. I'm like,
and then to add to that, and they add to the cultural influence of going all over the United States, I have a teenage daughter So
Getting high over there, aren't they?
like today, I'm in the crowd doing the bike games, talking about somebody throwing shade on something, and I was like,
Yeah, dude.
I cannot believe I just said that in front of all these.
So another podcast. I don't know if you listen to Jason Hallman's from fucking Garage Built Hell on Wheels podcast. He's a dude out of Tampa. He's a good friend of mine, and his other buddy Cody Childress. I don't know if you met him.
Yeah.
He has the orange FXR that. I was listening to their podcast, and he's like, "Dude, I don't want to throw shade on this dude." And I was like, "What is that? I've never heard that before." But, and I guess it's an old saying, I guess, or whatever.
I don't know if it's an old saying, but the teenage girls are sure pretty happy with it. So that
It's in a lot of rap right now. So
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, so is it new or old? I'm lost.
think it's just
I
been
think-
around. I just think it's kind of come back.
Oh, okay.
that and things being fire, like Joe Rogan says in that special.
Dude.
Oh my God, that's so fire!
Yeah, dude. I was at
Sounded terrible.
me and my wife were at, she cuts hair for a living, so we were at some little deal with all the people she works with and shit, and people kept saying lit, dude. That song is lit. And I'm like, is this like past or pretense to fire? Like it's just hot, or like what is like, I don't know. I'm just getting old, I guess, So I got my good ones. Like that's badass. That's cool. Hell yeah. Right on.
There was another one that you used to say a whole lot that's what I'm all about. Or it was something like that. You used to say that a bunch in your first podcast, and it was like, I think he says that like every other paragraph.
Dude, it is weird, man. Like, and you become conscious to it, man. And then you're like, I don't listen to them anymore after I put them out, but I used to listen to all of them. But I had to make myself release it, and then I would listen to it. Because if I would like listen to it before I release it, I was like, man, I can't put that out there. I sound like an idiot. So we did this podcast like fourth one in. I had some of my best friends over the house, and we got annihilated.
Drunk cast.
Annihilated. And I was like, fuck it, because I finally found out on our Patreon how to like put something out there, like put a like just for our Patreon listeners. And I was like, and I went back and listened to the podcast. Like, fuck, I'm gonna give it to him. I listened to it, and I was so embarrassed listening to me try to sound smart and philosophical and just like I had my shit together in some kind of way. And I was like, dude, now that I'm talking about it now, I know everybody's gonna want me to release it and put it on there, but fuck, man, I was embarrassed listening to it in my shop alone. You know what I mean?
Dude, me and one of my buddies used to drop acid together, and we swore to God that when we dropped acid, we could figure out all the problems of the world.
You can't.
You would think so.
Oh.
But one night we decided, you know what? To prove this, we're going to keep a notepad here, and we're going to write down all these good ideas. And
Look like some hieroglyphics.
no, we wrote down the line, naked with boots on, riding motorcycles. And then there was a picture of a phone so we could call off of work the next day, and then there was nothing. So I'm not sure what kind of fucking brilliance came out of that trip, but it wasn't long after that I stopped doing acid.
I feel like there's a part in like drinking that I get really smart, and it's like a really
Small window.
That's the 3 to 6 drink range, and then once you hit 6, it just goes downhill. Guys used to come over when I was younger. I used to work out of my garage and in the sport truck scene, and my buddies caught on. They were like, dude, Moose works really hard up to about 6 or 7 beers, and then it's over. So they would only bring over a 6-pack.
Yeah.
And I was looking around and like, dang, where's
Dude,
the rest of the
need some
beer?
more.
And they're like, oh, that's all we got. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's with the podcast thing, it's been fun, and it's like grown a different part of our business that I never really expected. It was just like me and Moose, dude, two talkers. We'll just sit here and just talk and talk and talk. And it's like my friends like, dude, you should do a podcast, man. Like y'all motherfuckers won't shut up. And so now we got a podcast and we don't shut up. So
Man, I'm glad I didn't break off into the same thing, because you know me, I know I talk more than anybody I know.
yeah.
For
Dude,
sure.
you did a podcast with Dan. It's like the longest one on record.
4.5, 5. No, it's 5 hours, and that was like the quickest freaking 5 hours ever.
I had to like stop at one point and come back to it a couple days later.
I had so many people be like, "No, I'm still listening to it." Still,
Well,
like 2 days later.
The crazy thing was like once you got to a certain point in that podcast, like that's when I was around. Like I knew you and I knew what was going on from the outside looking in, and so I was like, okay, now, because before you were talking about like the bomb shelter.
Yeah, it was like the history of where I came into just doing the thing I do.
Yeah.
Not just motorcycles, but just life and work experiences and stuff. And no, it's fun, man. And I really enjoy your podcast because both of you guys, because I love to, have insight into what's going on in the industry and hear different aspects of different things, the mechanics of, the paint game, or somebody in the FXR scene, or, like with you talking industry talk, and it comes down,
you get a lot of great guests on, man.
Great to hear that.
You know who you had on? Big Joe, and Big Joe stopped at my house one day. He was on his way back from Hand Built Show, and he talked, and he blew my mind.
Yeah, Joe's one of the most intelligent people you'll meet out here. He really is.
He's a really good dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it's just cool that now that we have, between, us, Dan, and, the Forever Two, is he still doing the Forever Two Wheels thing?
Ken? Yeah.
So there's just a lot of good content out there for people that are really into motorcycles and want peeks inside, the minds of people that are trying to make shit happen. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and some of I think going back to magazines, the insight that you get into the industry through magazines, like before podcast, it was magazines.
Yeah.
So you read the editorial portion of the magazines because it gave you a little bit of knowledge.
For the next month, that's all you had. So you end up going through the whole magazine
4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And it's great to know that people orate today through podcasting to translate that same story. It doesn't take away, you create layers. You add the podcast, you add the magazine, you have the Instagram, you have all the social media.
And the on the ground things like what you guys have been putting on at these rallies and events.
Yeah, and I mean, the cool thing is if it's just what you do, like we added we tow a 34-foot trailer behind this thing, and we'll go out on the road for 2 or 3 months at a time because there's an office built into the trailer.
Yeah.
And it's not so I can talk about being some kind of road warrior, because I'd rather be doing it on a motorcycle, but rather than drive back and forth 1,000, 2,000 miles every time I go out and back, I get to just stay, and I get to get those stories and talk to those people, and the shops that people drive past on the way to and from the rally all the time. I'm starting to visit those shops. You know? So it's not that hard when this is just your life and this is what you do.
But you know what's good about that as well is like it gives you a much more accurate idea of the different cultures or the different areas of the country and how the biking is in this area versus this area. Is this more like is this more of a big wheel kind of area, or they have a culture of choppers and these other things? It's like, so by traveling a lot, you get to get a much more in-depth view of it and get the opinions.
Yeah.
Because you go to one area and people are hell-bent on some aspects of the industry, and then you go to one area and nobody gives a fuck about it, you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're planning on doing a lot of traveling next year on the bike and, figure out this little Zoom thing we had an issue with today, but I don't know. I dig it, man. I've had a good time doing it, and glad you guys do it as well. So,
yes, sir.
You got something?
Can we talk a little bit about what's going to happen next year here at the beach?
Yeah, real quick. I can go over that. So, for about 3 years, I've been working on the proposition of doing a beach race in Galveston, and not like the Race of Gentlemen. The Race of Gentlemen's awesome. What they do is great, but we want to do a beach oval race here, and I've got it set up that the motor maids are going to come in and actually do a parade lap to kick it off like the old days of racing, but it's not costume and period motorcycles. It's just going to be people having fun on motorcycles. So we'll split it up into divisions of time periods of motorcycle. There'll be a run what you brung class. There'll be classes for kids, but the Lone Star people have given us a property right on the beach that we're actually going to have a beach race on the last Sunday of the Lone Star Rally in 2019.
Nice.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks like, we're sitting here looking at the area that you're planning on doing it, and I was just telling you, when I was a kid, we used to come to Galveston, and that little pavilion right there was where that was the hub where you get cotton candy and fucking ice cream, and then you go get your toes bit by crabs out there and shit. But
yeah, it's a great building. The name of the beach is Stewart Beach, and it's just 2 miles down from the seawall where we were at doing the bike games and stuff today, so easy access.
That, to me, that's cool though, that you're like you said, trying to build the culture, trying to build things for people to do, and help grow the events.
Well, I got a lot of my buddies here in Texas, and there's a lot of great events in Texas too, like you said, a lot of the smaller stuff, but when something's going on like this, I want the chopper and vintage and swap meet guys to have a place here too, You know, and it's as easy as getting involved. And I mean, it's a bunch of work, and it'll be, you know, like I said, 3 years of going through red tape to actually get it to where we're ready to do this. But, you know, that's the gig, right? That's what we said earlier.
Well, cool, man. Your old lady.
It said eat something.
Oh yeah, I gotta set alarms because I get so busy in a day that I'll forget to eat.
Yeah.
And like seriously, I'll pick up weight through a year of being too busy because I will only eat breakfast, and that's it. And like I just won't eat all day, so my metabolism gets stupid slow. And
Nope, I have the same problem. I work too much, and I get told to eat all the time. And we'd go to rallies like Sturgis and stuff. We'd have customers when we were working a booth out there for Misfit. We had customers that knew that we didn't take care of ourselves all day, and they would just hang out in the booth to help us work, and then they would be like, hey, you need something to eat. Hey, you need a drink. Hey, let me help you. That's the only way that made it happen.
So what else is on the books for you guys the rest of the year? Is it kind of like the down season now, or what?
the rest of the year this year, I was telling Chris this before we got on air, man, like, the rest of the year, I'm going to make up to my wife how hard I was on her this year because for the last 12 months, from Lone Star last year, we almost didn't come off the road. We did every IMS show, built a whole motorcycle through the IMS tour.
Yeah.
Then started doing the, and while we were doing that, we started building the Twisted Tea giveaway bike, the second one.
Yeah.
Then when we got off of IMS, we went straight to Donnie Smith and then straight to Daytona and straight to the Progressive series. And we ran with Progressive doing Grease and Gears Garage all summer and built 2 more motorcycles.
What is the Progressive series a part of? Is it just like...
Well, like Progressive is the title sponsor of Lone Star Rally now. So Progressive does that for, I think it's 6 different rallies across the country.
Oh, okay. So it's just the main rallies.
Yeah. So, and they're not all big rallies. Like, they sponsor one of the really cool ones, dude, you should put on your radar, is a thing in Chicago called Motoblot. It's one of the coolest fucking events I've ever been to. It's like right in the middle of the year.
Okay, well, that'd be... I'm planning a big ride up to... we have a lot of homies up in Michigan. So I'm planning a ride up to Michigan. I want to go around the lakes, back through Milwaukee, Chicago, and then home.
Through the UP.
Yeah.
Dude, you love that.
Yeah,
up across the Mackinac Bridge. So badass.
Yeah. So I want to ride up through there and do all that stuff and, you know, do some podcasts. I think Clem's Speed Shop is up there in just north of Detroit, I think. So I think we're going to go get some of that and then hit up some of the Chicago shops. A lot of badass painters in Chicago and some good bagger guys.
That Motoblot,
I do want to get DA on here. You know, I wasn't a big fan for a long time, but I love those guys now.
Yeah, I've heard you not be a DA fan before, and then your eyes were open to it because you and I have had a couple conversations about it, and you weren't exactly sure where your position was with them because you just didn't know them. I kept telling you, I was like, no, they're my boys, man. Like, Pete and Chuck are my best friends in Chicago.
Yeah,
they are amazing.
Well, they
people,
started building bikes that weren't cookie cutters, and not that they were doing that before, but when they started doing some really wild shit, I was like, I can't hate that, man. Like, dudes are just doing it.
Well, you've seen the frame that I built for them for the bike that won Baddest Bagger.
Yeah, that like bronzes.
Yep, and so like that's Chuck's bike, and that looks like a hookah stem.
Yeah.
So it's got this, like it gets larger and smaller, and then it's cross-drilled to match all the Covington's dimple parts that they have. And we were at Sturgis 3 years or 2 years ago whenever we built that, and there was this large beaded necklace in the cabinet, and it was pouring down rain and hailing, and we were all partying in the rig because there was nothing to do. It was hailing and raining.
Yeah.
So we all just had this party, and somebody or Pete or Chuck, I can't remember, was wearing this necklace, and we joked around and said, "Hey, dude, did you smell that necklace before you put it on?" Like, it looked like anal beads.
Yeah.
And so the joke was he's wearing an anal bead necklace.
Yeah.
And then so we kind of joked around about the frame, called it the anal bead bagger. And so when Dave went to go publish it, and it won Baddest Bagger, he goes, "You guys realize I can't put anal beads on the front of my magazine." And so he's like, what do you want me to call it? And so we called it Bagger Beads. And so that bike is called the Bagger Bead bike. But yeah, I mean, and they bought the first 32 that we machined, because you remember Chris had Doug machine the 32-inch wheel in 2013, and we brought it out with no tire. And so
just to toot my horn, I painted the first 2 32 bikes.
Well, fair, good.
You know, I painted 2 of the 4 that were out there.
I built the frame for that 32 bike that Pete had, the red one.
Yeah.
And that bike has gone through a couple hands now. It still looks really good. I think it's all paneled out now, but
well, just in my defense, like the whole deal was that era whenever that whole era, like I was kind of known for riding the big wheel all over the country. That was my gig.
And everybody shit on you, dude.
Nobody
wanted to say, "Oh, you rode your shit." I mean, everybody was like, "Look how clean my bike is."
So my thing was like I would get drunk and I would get on Instagram and I would talk shit to all these shops with their big ass dualies and trailers, and they kind of took offense to it. You know, Sean from TOL used to give me shit about that all the time because Sean don't like riding bikes, but they're talented builders, and I started to like learn that okay, there's a class of these guys out here that are really just talented designers and builders that aren't necessarily like bikers that got to ride everywhere and do this, and I had a hard time accepting that, but once I did, I was like, they do badass work, and they're still adding value to this whole thing. So I was like, I can't talk shit about someone that's actually bringing something good to the table for the rest of us.
Dude, I had a kid call me out the other day. I put a post up of me kicking my new shovel head that I just finished for the Lichter show.
Yeah,
and it's here. I actually took it on the ride for the deal, and I was kicking. And I was like, yeah. You know, fall and in Pennsylvania with the shovel head. It's shovel head season, and I said, see you suckers in Galveston. And this kid puts up there, just curious, will you be riding that shovel head to Galveston? And I said, well, it's a fresh motor, 1,500 miles, and when I'm coming back, I'll be middle of November in Pennsylvania, so you do the math. And he goes, no need to do the math, bro. Just hook up your little trailer and tow it down there. He said, why even build a chopper if you're not going to ride it? And I went, I don't ever do this. I went, okay.
Feed the monster, Chris.
I said, listen, I am lucky enough now to have several bikes to choose from when I decide what I'm going to ride. And because of that, today I can ride a dirt bike in the dirt, a chopper usually for fun, a salt flat racer when I go to Bonneville, and generally a bagger for touring, right?
Yeah, it's a coyote out there on the beach.
But I said, I have a 49 panhead. I've ridden in almost 49 of these connected continental United States.
Yeah.
I said, I've ridden... You know, on my travel vest that I wear when I do real travel, I've done 1,000 miles in a day over 24 times. I've done 1,500 miles in a day over a dozen times. I've done coast to coast in 62 hours. Like, I've ridden more than my fair share, more than would require me to justify whether I'll ride or not to some little prick on fucking social media. But I became an old man like this, dude. I was just like,
listen here, you little pussy. Yeah, it is one of those things because like if the people online don't see you do it recently, if it's not like one of your tagged videos of like just riding across country, then this dude doesn't ride bikes and never have. But that's what I was like. The more I talked to the older cats, and they told me their stories of riding a Sturgis in the 90s and shit when I was fucking playing with Ninja Turtles and stuff, it was like, okay, I need to shut the fuck up because these dudes have done it. They might not do it now because of a lot of reasons, you know. Fuck. I can't. If I had a big ass $200,000-$300,000 rig that I can sleep in, I would still want to know that I've done the ride before, just to have an accurate, you know, like opinion about it. But man, I would love to have one of those too.
So one of the fortunate things I had going for me over the last year and a half, 2 years, you know, moving away from Misfit. Last year, I ended up going up late to up to Sturgis, and so Crystal and one of our veterans from Crystal's nonprofit motorcycle missions, drove the truck, and so I rode my Dyna from Dallas to Sturgis, or from Oklahoma City to Sturgis.
Yeah, I remember that.
By.
Yeah. That was last year.
It was 2 Sturgises ago.
Okay.
And it was because I was like, I never get to ride. I'm riding to fucking Sturgis.
Yeah.
Just to kind of say I did it, but at the same time, I really needed to get outside my head and get on the road, dude. And
I figure so much shit out.
It's so great.
Right,
and then
dude.
This year, I rode the Dyna to Sturgis because there's so many people that see bikes like you. You would build this bike and you're coast to coast in it, you know, and you're all over the place. But I think it's real valuable for people to see that these bikes get built and used. And it's kind of a proving point for me to say, okay, you guys see this bike with a 26 on it, but it does handle, it does maneuver.
I mean,
it does
think
all
about it
shit.
like this, man. Like if you're a builder, so you're gonna have a following base, or just people that are you're very important to because of your skill set. But maybe they're also into motorcycles, so when they see you riding, they're like, dude, he's into that too, man. Maybe I should try it. And I think that the more people that just ride bikes and really enjoy the road, even if it's just like 3 or 4 day weekend trips, just, man, like so much great stories, or so much of your life can be like I said before, like just riding 2 Sturgis could be more epic than Sturgis. It just depends on your friends, what you're trying to do. And
so I pay back the fact that I got to ride to Sturgis 2 years in a row by driving all the way home while they sat in the truck. And I'm blessed to have an amazing girlfriend that let me ride my shit to Sturgis. But it's right, because getting out there and riding your bike, it does inspire other people to want to ride. Man, I really love being on the road.
Dude, it's awesome.
And I mean, if I can ride to the gas station, dude, I'm gonna put my bike underneath me and go freaking ride to the gas station, for crying out loud, just to get out. But
and you know what, you want to show people, like, that shovel head's new, so I'm going through the whole deal, breaking it in and everything else. But for the next 4 or 5 years, people will see me all over this country on that shovel head, because I'm going to show you that, with a hardtail and a Paco Springer and, a little peanut tank, I ride this bike. I dig the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And overcome that idea that I'm just going to put $6,000 or $8,000 into a bike build to park it in my garage and take it out to shows. No, there's no point in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
I will just take $6,000 or $8,000 and put it in a shoebox and put it in my fucking garage.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do, because the real fun happens out there. Doesn't matter if it's a 1,000-mile ride or a 100-mile ride.
Yeah.
Getting on that motorcycle and going and doing something, 1 or 2 friends, that's the shit. That's where this is at.
See, I try to tell people too, like, take it a step further. A lot of people do the bar rides. Like, hey man, there's that bar about 80 miles out from Dallas. Let's go hit that up. I tell people, like, man, dude, on a Saturday, ride as far as you can. No plans to where you're gonna stay. Just go out with you and your friends, maybe your old lady, something like that, and just go out and ride and see where you end up. Find a hotel or a campground or something, and you're with your friends, so you're gonna be able to have a good time, and then come back the next day. It's a completely different experience. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what I tell people to do all the time, because I was lucky enough. I found this out I rode the first Hoka Hay race.
Yeah.
Right? From Key West, Florida to Homer, Alaska.
Damn.
And it zigzagged back across the country. I did 9,500 miles in 11 days, completely by myself. Right?
So, you didn't go crazy, being alone.
It was the best shit that I ever did in my life, because when you ride a motorcycle and you ride, around the block, you're thinking of everything you just walked away from.
Yeah.
The last conversation you had, shit that you should have done before you left, shit you got to do when you get back. When you get 100, 200 miles away, you start thinking about stuff you did last month, a couple months ago, things that you said to people that maybe you wish you'd have said them a little bit different.
Yeah.
When you get 2,000 miles into a ride, it's stuff that you did 8 years ago, 10 years ago. You start stripping away these layers. When you get over 5,000 miles into riding, you're down to just absolute pure thought. You are just thinking in that moment.
Nice.
You're not reflecting, you're not regurgitating what ifs and what you should do in the future. You're just it's just pure thought, and you start to realize how fragile life is, how beautiful this world is, and exactly what your place is in it. I mean, when I rolled up the Alaskan Highway, dude, I rode the whole Alaskan Highway, and at one point the sun stopped coming down, up and down, and it was just like different shades of afternoon. I lost track of time. I lost track of where I was at. I started feeling really sleepy, and I'm like, I'm gonna pull over for a minute and crash out beside the bike. As I drifted to a stop, and it would be 150 miles between towns, and you were lucky if there was a gas station at the next town. Mm-hmm. I drifted to this spot, and just as I started to put the kickstand down, I looked over, and a collie dog size porcupine, something had bit the head clean off of it in one bite. And I kicked the bike back in gear and got back up on the fucking road. I was like, I got at least 1 more hour in me that I can keep riding, because I realized at that moment that I am not at the top of the fucking food chain whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And life got real, my place in this whole universe got real insignificant, man. And it was profound. It was profound. It made me respect everything so much more, you know?
I think that happens to a lot of people. I mean, you know, you put it in a good perspective with the amount of time being gone, and we kind of push our friends to do a ride. You know, we ride to California every year, and every year we're trying to do more days and more out of the way, more, you know, scenic stuff, and it really does, like, you out on the road, you're not fucking with your, you know, phone. Half the places you stop, you have no service, so you end up starting to find yourself around campfires in the middle of nowhere, just getting no homo intimate with your friends, you know what I mean? Just talking life and shit. And you
when it's tribal,
you
get tribal gaming, and I'll tell you what that comes down to, man. Like on a philosophical or, you know, whatever level, there's a thing called the survival dynamic that's built into all of us.
Yeah.
You know, it's the satisfaction that you get from providing for your own survival, being able to fend off threats and build your own house and get your own food. And through technology today, you know, we've cheated the survival dynamic. Survival, at least in the United States, is almost taken for granted.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a place to sleep. You're gonna have food. Like, so we've cheated it to the point that we replace that survival with like the most extreme shit, extreme sports, extreme drugs, like these extreme lifestyles that give us an almost death sensation that we can come away and get a like junk food sense of that survival dynamic. When you're out on a motorcycle like that, like you said, and you start stripping away, like the phone doesn't work here, and it's a long distance between gas stops, and you know, it gets primitive, and that tribal mentality comes back in. That comes from the fact that, like, deep down, when, you know, we need each other for our survival, you know, and that's that survival dynamic of work, man. It's a really cool thing. It's a really cool thing that happens when you get away from the bullshit out here.
What I found is, like, going through these little small ass, super small, super in the middle of nowhere towns that have their own little life going on, and daily you're at the gas station and that's the spot, so everybody's there, knows each other, that's they're all hanging out till it closes, and it's like that puts a lot of perspective in my life of just like, you know, once you get all the distractions out of the way and stuff, you can really find just, you know, cool shit like that.
And, you know, for me, like the first,
we're
getting raided by a truck over here. The first, you know, couple hours on the bike, you're still in the middle of your thing. You're like, I'm buried in work. I got all this back behind me I've got to worry about when I come back. But at the same time, you get to that point where it all starts to strip away in layers, and then you have less and less to concern yourself with, and then you're just kind of stuck in this zone and this empty space inside this helmet, or if you wear one or not. But either way, it's a really magical freaking place to be, because then you start to focus on things that kind of matter.
Well, I mean, think about doing that same trip with your buddies, you know, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're on your way to Sturgis, and you're leaving from Florida, so you have a long ride, right? Every stop, man, it's like, man, you know what I was thinking about on the way over here? Blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, 45 minutes go by, shit, we got to get back on the road, man. And then, once again, next stop, you got another conversation. You're just like fine-tuning your thoughts and things like that, you know, so.
Well, I always have, for a long time, I've correlated the motorcycle experience, and I call this thing the metaphysics of motorcycling. But there's like a transcendental meditation that goes on, and I'll prove this. If you've ever ridden beside a guy and your motor and his motor gets into perfect
it's harmony, sync,
and you can hear that wong 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 wong, that's that thing, man. That's that thing, you know, that the Buddhists talk about when they meditate, and it's happening right there, you know.
It's crazy, because I practice TM regularly, and it is like, I've definitely found myself in groups where I sense that kind of thing, where you just have this synchrony between you and the person next to you, and you get locked in this zone where everybody's kind of like in the same headspace. It's really a neat place to be, man. And when you say it that way, referring to that, it's very similar to that.
I feel like when it's like that, though, your bikes got to ride perfectly next to each other. Like, in my head, I'm thinking about it. They're like the police bikers that are just like, everything's synchronized. That's fucking fun, man. Well, shit, dude, it's late now, I guess. We can wrap this one up, and we'll do it again sometime, man. Like I said, this was kind of like a last-minute thing. I was down here. I was just trying to reach out to a couple people, and I wanted to meet you, which is, so it's, you know, best way to meet someone is have a 2-hour conversation with them.
It's good talk, man.
Yeah.
I dig it. I'll do it again with you anytime.
Yeah, man, if you're ever coming through Dallas, man, I'll just, like I said, we can always sit down and we can have more subject matter and like specifics.
Someday he will move to Texas.
It's getting closer all the time. I found an old boy up here that got property in Marble Falls, dude. He was speaking my language.
Marble Falls is the shit, man.
Right?
I love it there, man. The next town up, which is Burnett, I love all that because Burnett has a water hole and the lake behind it that I always go to. Me and the old lady do. I love that place. But yeah, Marble Falls is shit. But dude, Texas is a good place to live for motorcycles, man. Even though we don't have the Cali riding or the Appalachians, the Smokies, and things like that, we just have the ability that you could ride all year.
Yeah.
You have to bundle up in some points, but you could really.
Not like Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I got a good buddy up in Pittsburgh. Jeremy from Lucky Strike, the painter up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine.
Right on.
Yeah. The last time I did this podcast this way was with him in Daytona. I ended up crashing with him at his Airbnb, and we did a drunk cast there too that I didn't release because it was kind of the same way. We went Facebook Live on that point, and one of my buddies, Jetty, the one that went with us, he doesn't drink much, so he was going all in. This dude, like when you were a kid, you like tuck your dick and balls behind your legs and you walk around and look, we're on live Facebook, and this dude walks around the corner with he's redheaded, so he's got a fire bush going on down there on Facebook Live with his, dick tucked between his legs. And I was like, this is a shit show, man. This is not professional at all. But, and Jeremy keeps telling me, he's like, dude, when are you going to release it? I was like, I can't release it, man. I can't. It's just a lot of nonsense. It's like we sounded like we had the best podcast in the world, but when you go back and listen to it, it's just like, it's just like the dumbest thing in the world, realistically. But it was so much fun doing it though. So, but anyway, stupid story.
No, it's good. It's good. You got to go through that stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the shit that we did as a Limpnicky lot, man. God, I don't know how people ever took me seriously again after that.
Yeah.
But you have to go through it. You have to go through it. It's the rite of passage.
Well, that's okay. So I guess I'm just kind of talking here, but we did a podcast. It's our highest listened to podcast we released, and it was with my buddy Joe Kidd. He's a FXR guru guy, right? I start the podcast a 12-pack deep. I finish an 18-pack in the podcast.
Yeah, it's a drunk cast.
And Joe's he's not a drinker, and my buddy Mark from Texas Performance was also on that podcast. Those two dudes they just carried it, and I'm in the background just like some drunk retarded kid, just like and this one time, and then I like go down a rant path and I have no end to it or no point, and it's like I don't know where I was going with that, and then I just get up and go pee and shit. It's like the worst podcast in the world, but apparently everybody loved it, man.
I would say this, and I know that your listeners will say this too, to your face or behind your back. Jace started this thing kind of bitter and pissed off at everybody in a bunch of groups who was super opinionated and liked to talk shit about all the different cliques. And then it's fun to hear Jace talk to somebody who kind of puts him in his place every once in a while. And then he goes, oh, yeah, well, I guess I never thought of it that way.
Well, I think that's the key to...
You've really grown. Like, seriously
No, that's the
grown.
key, though. It's like, for all of us, we all have to have our opinions because that means that we've thought about the situation. We have opinions. But then when you meet people that give you another perspective, you have to be man enough to say, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, I don't feel like that no more. And I think that by doing podcasts and talking to a lot of people that have done things and are masters of their worlds, you find yourself growing much more because you're getting a much more accurate view inside that opinion, So
And that, my man, right there is an educated man.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to be honest, and because if you get on this thing, everything we say is recorded, so everybody can just like record back. Didn't you say you hate trailers and now you're saying it's okay? I'm like, dude, I'm just saying that there's a time and a place for it, blah blah blah.
Let's go back to Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
let's go back to Joe Rogan and pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the world except that ring, if a guy shows up in thigh-high leather boots, a Speedo, and a leather mask,
Yeah.
But fucking time.
Yeah. 100%. And you could definitely... You've seen the political commercials where they have the contradictory statements like, well, I said I support this, but then they have that flashback where they're like, no, fuck that group. Well, you could definitely do that in Jace's podcast.
Yeah,
you could probably do a couple couple.
Someone can make a video of just me contradicting myself each other, like within 2 weeks of each time, you know.
But as the contradiction happens, your growth and the change of who you are and your knowledge base changes.
Better,
so it's good.
That's what I've told, like, even the guys like my brother. So it's like, man, like, we're really just kind of made up of all the experiences and people that we meet. So the more people that we meet that are fascinated, and especially when you're on a podcast. So if you're somebody that you know I'm reaching out to be on a podcast, it's because, you know, you've either got a skill or you've done something or something, you know, something to talk about. And so that helps, you know, like you said, you grow from that shit, man. So 5 years from now, this podcast is going to be really good. So you should guys stay tuned.
subscribe. Patreon.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
Patreon.
Well, shit, man, you got anything else before we wrap this up or what?
Oh, that's it, man. You know, be cool. Just like we're talking about here. Take the time to get to know people.
Yeah.
Even if your thing is hate, you get a much more satisfying hate out of really knowing why you hate somebody than to just pick something dumb to hate them over. You know, like get to know a motherfucker and really understand, man, you piss me off. And this is why. Maybe you might end up not hating them at all.
Yeah, like,
you know?
That's cool, man. That's a good one to live by.
One thing I will say to any of the listeners that are just like locked in a closet and don't know anything about Cycle Source, I really feel that Chris and Heather are definitely two of the hardest working freaking people in motorcycle magazines that are in this nation, doing it on their own, not supported by anything but themselves, and just, I mean,
a lot of great
supported
companies.
by a bunch of great companies. But I'm just saying, they're not a conglomerate that's, you know, taking your money. These people freaking really are the blood, sweat, and tears of this industry, and they do it for the passion and the love for what it is they create. And I mean, I love you guys for everything you do, and I appreciate you supporting, you know, myself and people like me, because it's people like you that keep people like me coming back.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Thank you.
For sure. Well, hey, appreciate it, and we'll
see you in Dallas.
We'll see you in Dallas, man.
Social.
So yeah, social media.
Social media is Cycle Source Magazine. You can hit us on almost anything: Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Every Thursday night at 9 p.m. on the East Coast, we do Shop Talk. I want to give a shout out to my boy Dan, Danger Dan, while I'm saying that, because I thought I had come up with this great name, because at first we were calling our thing Weekly Report, and I was like, man, we gotta change it to Shop Talk, you know, it'd be cool like that. And somehow I had totally put it out of my head that the name of his thing was Talk Shop. So I apologized to Dan in the magazine. I told him, I said, dude, I'll just change the name. And he goes, no, it's a cool name. He said, keep that.
Yeah.
And he insisted that I keep Shop Talk. So I say that as much as I can so people don't think that I was pissing on Dan and, like, you know, stealing his name and shit. So
Nah, it's cool. Dan's a good dude, man.
he is. Awesome. He is. He does some neat stuff with his podcast. So go check him out too.
Well, shit, man. Thank you, and we'll wrap this up now, guys. So
Right on.
peace.
Right on.
Let me find
Right on.
One drink for the road.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a fun experience, man. Very interesting to talk to Brian. Fuck, I'm doing it again. Chris Callen. See, it's in my head now, and I just keep fucking up. So, Chris, I'm sorry if you actually do listen to this podcast and you hear me fuck up your name that many times. It's very unprofessional of me. It's just unprofessional. I'm sorry. I'm not perfect. But anyway, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, again, for the Chris Moose and the Chris Callen, the Chris gang. Thank you guys for being on this podcast and sharing some of your insights and stories with us. So I want to thank our sponsors once again, D&D. Don't forget about what was the deal? It was, the veterans 20% off deal. So don't forget to check that out. It starts the 10th through the rest of the month. So 20% off for veterans. And you have to call 844-D&D pipe with proof of your service to get those deals. But, just do that and still tell them you heard about them on the podcast, as well as don't forget to check out their website, exhaust.com. And there should be a place where in checkout you can put Fast Life, one word, for 5% off. So check those guys out on Instagram as well. D, the letter N, D, pipe on Instagram. So many things. It's hard to say sometimes. But anyway, like I said, I don't know if I did the phone number, but just real quick, 844-D&D pipe. And you can actually talk to an actual live human being. They still exist on the phones. Also want to thank Texas Performance MC for doing all they do for us. You can also check him out on Instagram under the same thing, Texas Performance MC. I want to thank Paint Huffer Metal Flake on IG and painthuffer.com. Don't forget about those guys if you want to step your game up in the paint world, or even maybe find some colors that you like that you want to let your painter know. If you're a bike builder, shop, whatever, and you're just kind of like looking for some inspiration, that's a good place to go check it out. So give them a follow, give them a like, maybe even buy some cool hats and swag. Check those dudes out. I also want to thank Horsepower Inc. You can check out their website at horsepowerinc.net. Also on Instagram as Horsepower Inc. and on Facebook as Horsepower Inc. Indy. Obviously, they're big bore throttle body kings. So, if you want to get that bike pepped up, you know where to go. Thank you guys for checking us out again. We should be back next week with some more podcasts. I'm really trying to ramp up the production of podcasts this month. So, thank you guys. And, we're going to keep doing it. So I appreciate you, and you guys have a great week and weekend, and we'll talk to you later.